It's alive. It's alive. Hey. What's up? So I've been banned from Facebook. Like, I can't comment in my Lodi group. I can't, there's like so many things I'm not allowed to do. I don't know what happened. I saw one thing in particular say that I posted, somebody flagged something that was copywritten in the Lodi group. I don't know, some sort of snitch, maybe a chud snitch or something. I don't know. Who knows, man? Who knows? I thought that was really lame. And, you know, if you're going to do that kind of stuff, don't even be in the group. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, tell on your friends. If you see something, say something. It's really not that big of a deal. But I guess I got all the privileges back on Friday. I think. Not quite sure. Sure. I wanted to sound like I was from Brooklyn, like my Nana. God rest her soul. Okay, these should be polished. There we go. I can see clearly now my computer screen. All right. We have part 2 of an episode. I'll give it just a few more minutes. I just want to let me update you from last week about what's been going on. I am now down to the last 10 tapes to digitize. It was a lot. I digitized a lot of stuff, man. You've no idea how much stuff. I've been a digitizing machine. It's when I transcoded it to ProRes, which is like a stockier sort of video format that you use for editing. Not to get too technical, but when I transferred it over to the format that I'm going to edit in and master in, if you will, all in told, it's almost 4 terabytes of information. 4 terabytes. And that's just the A cam. That's not even the B cam, which I don't think I'm going to use very much anyway. So, but I have to tell you, I'm really excited. I was looking back on some of the stuff just a little bit, and I just you got a sneak peek. If you saw the last episode at the tail end, you saw some of that stash, just like, you know, screenshots of that stash. I've been posting little things, been fun, really sort of jogging my memory. It's amazing when you put the bars, when, you know, I do the color bars before I start the interview, and the pre-talk. There's pre-talk in underneath the color bars, like it's bars going like, but instead of the, it's me and the interview subject talking, and just lots of interesting conversation that I sort of forgot about, which is cool, I guess. I don't know. So there's that. I really wish I could be live on Facebook at the same time. It's not going to allow me to do that. What else did I want to say before I launch into my whole thing? Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I was sort of like, man, am I really about to do a whole show right now? I already recorded earlier today, but, you know, I have something tomorrow. I have a new show tomorrow. That's what I wanted to talk about real quick. So I have a show and tell show happening tomorrow. It's live. It's called, I forget what it's called, Real Peaks or something. The other, my friend Nathan, who runs Genre Blast Film Festival, this is in the film world. I straddle lots of different worlds, right? Like I know some of the guys. I know some of the guys in this horror punk scene. I know these fringe misfit people. You know, a lot of different communities, and I'm definitely been somewhat a little involved with the indie horror film community, which is a really cool, tight-knit community. And so I've invited a bunch of my friends who are across the country to come on my channel, and we're going to do a show and tell. And the way the show and tell works is we're each going to reveal a DVD that we want to talk about, a movie that we really love, and we're just going to go around a circle. Very simple, just like show and tell in elementary school. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We kind of did something similar on New Year's, and we just had such a good time that I wanted to try and do it for the channel. Additionally, if you work in the service industry, if you work in restaurants, if you work in hospitality in any sort of way, check it out. We have another new show. So many shows. There's so many shows on this channel. It's called Foodies Confidential. It's with my friend Trevor. He pitched me the show, and I said, great, let's do it on my channel. I don't know how long it's going to go for. Jeff, who reads at Wikipedia, that fizzled out. Didn't really work out the way I hoped it would. This is all about trial and error. As long as we have our main flagships, we got Pizza Punk. I got another Pizza Punk episode coming as well. Figured I'd mention that. I've talked several times on here about the band Wolfface. One of my favorite bands. I use their music to the soundtrack of Romeo's Distress, my feature-length film. And I had Michael J. Wolf on the show. So that's going to drop. I guess it would technically drop on Friday. That's what I'll do. It's gonna drop on Friday. So check that out. We talk a lot about the music business. Michael J. Wolf is a really awesome, interesting cat. Really, really love and respect this dude. I was supposed to, he and the band were flying me down to Florida last year in March, the weekend that COVID really hit, and I had to cancel my flight. I was supposed to shoot they're sponsored by Liquid Death Mountain Water. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like water in a tall boy can. And we were supposed to shoot the commercial spot for that, and it did not go down. But I forgot to tell him, he did such a phenomenal commercial on his own. You know what I'm saying? He ended up shooting something on his own. It really worked out for the best in the end for them. I'm very happy for them. Okay. All right. Enough of the BS. Enough of the stalling. We're going to begin the show. So this is actually the middle part of what I guess is going to be a trilogy, an unexpected trilogy of shows. It started last week. We had just an amazing treat that was bestowed upon us around Christmas time. I guess an old acquaintance of someone who I very, very casually knew through meeting him through another friend once or twice. I've been Facebook friends with him for years and years and years since our meeting, who was supposed to be interviewed for the Lodi doc. He's in the Fin Club. His name's Greg Fasolino. And I did a whole thing about him last week. Lo and behold, he is just digitizing and uploading his own archive full of interviews and tapes. He's a musician, a journalist, yada, yada, yada. This is for the people who will watch us who did not see last week's episode. He blessed us with a never before heard Misfits interview from 1982. And as far as I know, the longest Misfits interview in existence on tape. You know what I'm saying? Pretty spectacular, if you ask me. And then he continues with this. Now he has done he enjoyed last week's episode. He's coming on the show next week. That's right. Next week. I think it's next Thursday. Greg is going to be on the show himself. We're going to talk all sorts of cool stuff. I'm really excited to have him on the show. Not Pizza Punk, the Lodi show. He's going to be on the Lodi show. That's what we're going to do it for. We're going to talk about the interview that we're going to look at tonight. We're going to talk about the Misfits interview. We're going to talk about so much stuff. In any case, tonight's main course is a never before heard, unreleased Danzig interview from 1988. Woo! I mean, this is cool, man. This is cool for several reasons. Again, it is a lengthy 48 minutes. It's a lengthy interview. It was for a magazine called Faces, which he was the co-author of. But they taped the interview. I mean, that's what you did back in the day when you didn't send an email. You held up your recorder and you'd have a conversation, and then you'd write the article based on that conversation, or you would transcribe the interview from the tape. Well, Greg, because he's a smart cookie, he kept all his tapes all these years. What he gave me a heads up. He sent me an email, and he told me that he was going to put this on. And I said, Greg, before you put it on, why don't you let me clean it up a little bit for you? Let me take out some of the hiss. Let me take out some of the mechanical noise. You can still hear it. Go over to his channel. If you go over to his channel, I linked it in the comments. Please subscribe to Greg's channel. Go over to his channel and actually listen to it. We're going to listen from Greg's channel because I did the cleanup job as opposed to last time where he had the unclean Misfits version on his channel. This time I did the cleanup job before he even uploaded it. And then I gave him back. I made a video for him, gave it back to him, and he uploaded it to his channel. He says I remixed it. I didn't really remix anything. All I did was clean it up. I put some filters on, and here was the interesting, the challenging part of this job, as well as the Misfits job. Here's what you run into. You have a recording that's really dirty, that's really messed up, ruddy, whatever, dinky. And you want to pull away all the bull crap, all the, crud, and try and get a clean sound. And you're divided between these two. You're at a crossroads, right? You're at a crossroads, and the crossroads is this: do I clean it up as much as possible and possibly lose the quality of the recording? Because what happens is when you put enough noise cancellation on there, when you put EQ and all these things, you put some compressors, some tube compressors to boost vocals. I do put a hard limiter on so it doesn't clip, all these things, boost the gain again, then do another noise capture, capture the more noise and cancel that out. When you do all this stuff, it sounds like it's in a washing machine. Like MP3 syndrome times 1,000,000. And so I did two versions of it. The first version is the first version I cleaned up was cleaned up specifically for clarity, meaning I wasn't trying to make it sound natural. I was just trying to make it clear so that we could actually hear what is being said. The second one, I left a little bit more in, and again, it's very nuanced. The difference between the two. I left more stuff in, so the voices feel more natural. It feels more real, I guess. And yeah, I was kind of agonizing over this, and I asked Greg what he thought. He thought the more natural sounding one, the all natural sounding one, sounded better. I was like, cool. Whatever you want, it's your tape. And so we're going to listen to that tape, and we're going to listen directly from Greg's channel. And like I said, subscribe, check out, go to the last episode for a full breakdown on all that stuff. It's all there. And if you look in the links in the comment and in the description of this video, you will see where you can subscribe to Greg's channel. Speak clearly, Jeff. Okay, with all that said, I got to tell you, I'm so blown away. I wasn't expecting to follow up this week with a Danzig interview. And here's the thing: I am blind on this. Yes, I cleaned up the interview, but I did not clean. I was not listening to what was being said. I was more focused on the background hiss from the tape, and you could hear the little turning thing. Like I was trying to just like pull as much of that out as possible. So I'm going into this interview blind. I don't know what was spoken between everybody. But before we even get there, I just want to show you. So this right here, as you can see, so this is the magazine that features. This was from Greg's post today. It was Faces was the magazine, and this is from This is actually came out in March of 1989, but the interview was done in 88. So that's the first thing we want to do. And Greg pointed out to me, they got Danzig's name right at the bottom, right next to Metallica. Because remember, this is anybody answer this question for you? This is a pre-Black Album Metallica, right? Black Album came out in 90 or 91. That's when Metallica really, truly exploded, right? If I'm correct, I believe I am. So Danzig is just establishing themselves. Metallica is about to record the biggest album of their career. That's where we're at in 1989, I suppose, right? And yeah, you can also see and check it out. get into our wild Danzig giveaway on page 36. More on that in just a minute, folks, because that found something really interesting that I did not know about Greg, which made this whole thing even sweeter than it was. So here's the article. It's by Lorena Alexander and Greg Fasolino right there. You can see. I'm not going to read. Maybe I'll just read just the beginning part because we're going to actually listen to the interview. Danzig is power unleashed. It is a bridge between the supernatural and the carnal. It's also the most ferocious rock and roll your primal nightmares could ever have dreamed up, and all packed into one individual of unequaled intensity, Glenn Danzig. Lodi, New Jersey's favorite son. I like that. Lodi, New Jersey's favorite son. Murder Graham and all his monster kids. Good vibes. I like that, Winston. That's fun. I love that they call him Lodi, New Jersey's favorite son. Glenn Danzig first brought forth his inner demons with punk pioneers, the Misfits, some 12 years hence. Isn't that weird to think? So if this is 1989, when this is released, the Misfits have only been around for 12 years. So bizarre to me. That's like 2009. Think about that. If this year is 2021 and the gap in time is only 2009. So Glenn Danzig did everything he did in the Misfits, did everything he did in Samhain, and is now just releasing Danzig 1 and that he started that in 2009, and now it's 2021. If you follow my crazy skewed logic of time, I'm trying to draw a parallel between time for us that makes more sense. I wasn't born then, so I don't know. Versus the time back then. I was born in 89. I was born in 85, but I was not around in 77. That's my point. So 12 years hence, fusing roaring guitars with his melodic, lion-like vocals and horror movie obsessions, Danzig powered the band through one classic single, Horror Business Bullet and Night of Living Dead, to name a few, after another, culminating in their Walk Among Us LP masterpiece. When he disintegrated the Misfits in 1983, he took the heart, soul, and voice, gave it a new, more sinister body, and named it Samhain after the pagan Halloween. See, someone who actually, Greg was around and saw Samhain and interviewed Glenn when he was in Samhain. So it's so nice to hear writers, talking about Samhain like they actually kind of know what they're talking about. You can kind of hear it. He took the heart and the soul and the voice and gave it a new, more sinister body. Remember what I've said in the past? This is what I've said. Halloween, Misfits is like campy, kooky, childhood Halloween grown up. And Samhain is like dark, real life horror, taking that and turning it to dark, real life horror, or dark, pagan horror, whatever you want to call it, that sort of thing. That's the difference between the two, Misfits, American Halloween fun suburbia, 1950 to 19 through the 1970s. Samhain, pagan stuff from 3,000 years ago when they were sacrificing little babies during the fall solstice or whatever it is, the fall equinox, or whatever you call it, that sort of thing. Samhain gave Glenn the chance to explore more complex musical ideas. More importantly, it freed his imagination to revel in mankind's ancient theories of the occult via albums like November Coming Fire. Yet it too succumbed. Wow, what a wonderful sentence. Let's take that back one more time. Samhain gave Glenn the chance to explore more complex musical ideas. More importantly, it freed his imagination to revel in mankind's ancient theories of the occult via albums like November Coming Fire. From the still pulsing ashes has arisen the ultimate musical incarnation of this unman. Do you know what an unman is? Greg, I know where you got that from. So an unman is from Swamp Thing comics, but I think Greg is using unman because he's kind of coining his friend's band. Joe Truck wrote a song called The Unman for his band, The Brain Eaters, featuring Damien from Samhain. So I wonder if that's where Greg is coming from with the unman. The band Danzig, richly metallic, a condensation of aggression. They are fated to awaken the mass consciousness to the frightening brilliance that bands such as Metallica have been adoring for years. Now is indeed the time for Glenn Danzig to reign, but in a frenzied flesh, not just blood. Stephen King would perhaps call him the interloper, noting his alien gaze and the dark pools of macabre that well up inside his mind. I, however, just call him genius. Greg, and then it says GF. So that was Greg's portion of the writing. Greg, excellent. What an excellent little forward right there, whatever you want to call it. And then I guess the rest of this is actually Lorena right there. And she goes into the really heavy stuff. I'm not gonna read all. Oh, it's just one thing though. I feel like an incompletionist if I don't read. All right, I'm just gonna read it. Although it's nearing Halloween, at the time of this although it's nearing Halloween at the time of this encounter, how appropriate. Greg and yours truly must resemble a pair of rambunctious kids waiting in line to meet Santa Claus. But this is no Macy's, and the dark, brawny figure stepping from the elevator and approaching us is no jolly old man with a white beard and a red suit. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The infamous it's Glenn Danzig. The infamous Glenn Danzig, some might say. The legendary Glenn Danzig is more like it. They're really stroking that ego, right? Glenn's ego. This is the man whose penetrating continence some journalists have called monstrous, grim, frightening, whose lyrical fascination with the macabre fans the flames of intrigue that shroud him, whose musical legacy is filled with violent, lurid imagery. There are those who won't to see Glenn Danzig. There are those who want. Sorry, that O looks like an A. There are those who want. No, those who won't. What that's a typo there. To see Glenn Danzig as an angry creature born not of this earth, who tore his way out of the dank bowels of some rabid beast, a demon among us. But Glenn Danzig just happens to be a passionate singer whose songs show that he is a man who thinks about morality, who thinks about worlds before and beyond the here and now, things on the dark side, perhaps exercising a dark side of his own. I would say it's kind of true. Glenn doing that, exercising his own demons, a little bit maybe. Danzig is someone who thinks, period. He is a lone wolf, but the power that rages in his magnificent voice is not that of a heart filled with evil, but rather the one that beats with an intensity which perhaps our numb and shallow world does not understand or accept. Now at last we are face to face with the enigma himself. Even here in the reception area at Geffen Records, the man so they're at Geffen Records when they're talking to him. The man has a presence that could coax the wings off an angel. I recall the impact of that very first time these ears were seduced by his mighty vocal prowess. You see, Glenn Danzig's songs don't give me nightmares, but the thought of what rock music would be without him does. Whoa! All right, let's bullwinkle that right there. Yeah, I like that. That was cool. Well said. Well said, Lorena. Lorena. So then here's the contest. So that, remember we talked about the contest on page 36. They Greg and Lorena decided to do a contest. This is the contest. Ready? Danzig contest, our most fiendishly fun giveaway yet. So there's the band, right? Check this out. To the top prize winner. Ready? From Glenn Danzig's very own collection, a genuine skull autographed by Glenn, Erie, John, and Chuck. An autographed copy of the Danzig CD, which in 1988, 1989, it's not easy to come by. Nowadays, a-holes say he was punched. Okay, just a quick thing about what Winston says about Glenn getting punched. I have decided we need to analyze. We're going to do a deep dive. Analyzing. We're going to analyze that tape. We're going to take it apart. We're going to scrutinize it to determine if what people think happened actually happened. because I got to tell you, I think that tape is kind of BS, if you ask me. And it's not just because I'm a giant Danzig nerd or Misfits nerd or whatever, but I think we need to talk about that tape, and we're going to do it. So be prepared for that episode. I've already put out my feelers. I'm looking for the highest quality version of the Danzig knockout video I can find. We're going to need it because we're going to have to look at it frame by frame to determine what really happened. So you can get an autographed Danzig poster, a 2-year subscription. Look at that. A 2-year subscription to Faces magazine and a Faces t-shirt. 10 to 10 runner-up winners. An autographed Danzig cassette copy. Ugh, cassettes. Limited edition Danzig shirt, an autographed Danzig poster, a 1-year subscription. Well, you only get 1 year as opposed to 2 years. And a Faces t-shirt. And there's no purchase necessary. It's sponsored by Faces magazine and Deaf American Records in cooperation with Danzig. So to enter, so this is what you have to do to enter and get that glorious skull. Ready? Tell us why you want to be the recipient of a skull from Glenn Danzig's personal collection. Keep it brief, under 30 words, and we'll have Glenn himself judge the most imaginative entries and decide who should be the grand prize winner. Runner-up winners will be determined by a random drawing. Please type or print your entry to ensure legibility. Don't forget to include your name, address, phone number, t-shirt size, blah, 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 to the Danzig contest, blah, 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 blah. And then here's all the small print. So here's what's interesting about the story. So when Greg was posting this and talking about, the story and yada, 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 I was kind of blown away because I actually knew about this contest very well, because you see, about 10 or so years ago, Jonathan Grimm, aka Jim Dorsey, aka Tank, the tour manager / roadie for the 95 Misfits, he played Frankenstein on the stage. He auditioned, there's an audition tape with Jonathan Grimm, and most notably had the legendary Grimm collection, one of the biggest, most vast Misfits, Samhain, Danzig collections out there in the 90s. So much so, this collection is what Mark Kennedy used in order to collect data and put that data on Misfits Central. So that what everybody knows about Misfits records, which I know is not really complete anymore, it's not anymore, came, in fact, from that collection, which Grimm would sell later on for a hefty sum. Let's put it that way, a hefty sum. Got himself a house with that collection. You know what I'm saying? Grimm, I don't know what to call him. Tank. I know him as Tank. Jim. Tank. I'll call him Tank. Tank was the winner of this contest. And he told me the whole story from his perspective, that there was a contest. And you know what he did to win? He had this parchment scroll. It was a parchment scroll that was wrapped in leather, bound in leather. And he I don't know if it was blood or if it was red ink. He did this whole thing and wrote this whole long thing, and it had some heft. It was very heavy. And he waited until the last possible minute to send it in to Faces, to Greg. So it's so funny that I hear the other side, all these years later. He sent it to Greg. He wanted to be at the top of the pile so that when Danzig saw it, he would be like, whoa, what is this big, heavy thing? And sure enough, Glenn did see it, and Glenn ended up picking Tank as a winner. And I want to, what did Greg responded when I brought up that I had heard let me see what I wrote to him real quick. Because now I want to know what I said to him. Give me 1 second, guys. It's right here. Give me 1 second. Everybody knows I need one. Okay, here's what I said. I said, postscript to the postscript. I know this story because I interviewed the winner of this contest for my doc. He was a prominent collector of Misfits, Samhain, Danzig stuff. His entry was written on parchment in blood or something and wrapped in a leather scroll. He still has the skull in his house. That's true. So Tank still has that skull. I saw it. It's a cow skull. He still has that cow skull in his house. It's one of the few things that he did not sell in his collection. He sold off everything. He doesn't have much left, but he had that. And Greg responded, yes, that's the one. I was almost afraid to touch it. It indeed was kind of creepy. He deserved to win. Haha. So I thought that was so funny because I was so sure this had to be the same contest. How many contests did Danzig do with skulls? Not too many. However, it's my understanding that if you found a skull on the side of the road and you sent it to Glenn, to the Fiend Club or whatever, like in the 80s, Glenn would send you some cool stuff in exchange for any skulls that he received. Thought that was kind of cool. So the last thing that we're going to look at before we finally dive into the interview is this comment. This was Greg's post, and the reason why, just like we did for last week, I wanted to show some of his. These are some of his notes. Is what I'm trying to say. Sorry. A nice long interview with Danzig for Faces magazine that I did jointly with Lorena Alexander in October of 1988. So it was almost 5 months before the issue came out. We were both huge fans. So Lorena, the editor-in-chief, so Lorena was the editor-in-chief for Faces, and me decided to interview Glenn together and write up the ensuing article as a duo. So we read the beginning of that article, and then the interview is the remaining thing. There's a fun postscript. We thought it would be fun to do a Danzig giveaway contest in the magazine, and Glenn decided to offer a cow skull from his collection autographed by the band. The story and the contest ran in the March 1989 issue, and we were inundated with a massive influx of entries, some of which were truly bizarre. I remember one guy sent a gross letter written in his own blood. That is Tank. That's Tank. That was the letter that Tank had written. On March 2nd, 1989, I drove the 15 minutes from our editorial office in River's Edge to Danzig's rehearsal studio in Lodi. So he was still rehearsing in 1989. He was still rehearsing in Lodi. So I guess, I don't know, when did he move to LA? It must have been in 1990. So he might have even been still living at home in the basement where he had been for the last however many years. Apart from that little bit of time he lived in New York in 1979, 10 years earlier. And Glenn, he came down to the rehearsal space. Once Glenn selected the winner, we actually mailed that thing out. Sadly, I tagged Lorraine on this post, but she seemingly vanished from the face of the earth. I last heard from her over a dozen years ago, maybe closer to 15 years past. Nothing on Google and no social media presence at all. Hope she is out there and someday comes across this. Thanks to me, Jeff Frumess, for enhancing the audio. You're very welcome, Greg. Thank you for the interview. All right, guys. With all that said, it's now time to launch in to the main event. All right, so I think we had some problems last time. Remember, we had there was some guy who was such a complainy pants about something involving, he didn't like the way it was presented. Let me know if there's any audio issues here. Okay. As we're literally just doing this dive thing. Remember, that's what we did last time. We're gonna do the same thing. That is what we're gonna do. So again, if there's any issues, please let me know. Hold on. Let's just take a look at 2 comments. Winston says, Jeff, the guy who shot the Danzig Punch video was in the music video my band did. What? He is a nice guy. I never asked him about it. That would be cool. I don't know if I want Winston. I don't know if I want to talk to him. I really don't. I've heard his side of the story. I think it's kind of BS. I don't want to get into it now. I want to save it for the episode. I'm just going to say one thing. The fact that there was a camera rolling while that confrontation was happening in the first place makes me think that the whole thing was somewhat of a setup. I'm not to say that Danzig's reaction was not genuine to his open-faced whatever that was, but I mean, it was so weird how there was a camera there. It really was. Why was there a camera there? It was just weird. So yeah, I don't know if I'd want to talk to him. Winston, are you in touch with him? You actually can get in touch with him? I don't know if I want to talk to that guy. I don't know what I would even say. I'd just be like, shame on you. How dare you? Yes. Triple crossbones indeed. Okay, guys, let's launch into the interview. Let's see if the quality of the tape holds up to the YouTube compression. Let me know if you can't hear it.
Glenn hates British interviewers, so let's not be British.
No, we're not British.
How was the tour?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It turned out really well.
Compared to the little round in America?
What do you mean?
Like better, worse?
Well, we were the opening act for Metallica in England, so I don't know if you know what it's like in England. It's like
I just want to say in contrast, guys, if you're new or if you're just joining us, first of all, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please like this video. Please leave a comment. All three of those things. Please do one of those things if you have not done so already. Second of all, Glenn, oh, the audio was a little low. Thanks for letting me know. All right, I'm boosting it up all the way, guys. It's jacked as high as it goes. Okay, so you let me know if there's a problem. What I was going to say is, Glenn, at this time, I don't know, and I'd love any of your opinions. You guys tell me, when was Glenn in Danzig? When was he at his most serious? Like, it was like, truly, I'm at my most serious. Like, when was he at his most serious? I want to say maybe between 92 and 94, 95, 96. Like in that era, in that arena, that's when he was at the height of his fame, and that's when he was the most serious. This is a 1988 Glenn Danzig. He's done a few shows as Danzig. The album is just released. I'm very curious to hear what he kind of sounds like, because he was very jovial in the Misfits interview we listened to last week. If you missed that episode, check it out. But I'm very curious to hear what his sort of candor. I got a little taste of it when I was cleaning up this audio for Greg. But yeah, all right, that's it. Although you can see, as you can see here, there's Lorena and Greg in the picture with Danzig. Oni says, yeah, around that time, 92 and up, you can tell in his MTV interviews he was more serious. Yeah, man. Yeah. Oh, Winston could get. So if we wanted to speak to the guy who punched Danzig, we could get in touch with him for the show. I don't know. Winston, I got to think about that. I don't know if I'd want to do that, honestly. I really don't. I don't even know if I care to. I'd rather just analyze the video. Unless if he had a clean copy of the video that we could scrutinize. That's what I would like to watch. Could you imagine if we had the whole tape? Like, you have to imagine what else is on that tape. Okay, save it. Going back to this real quick.
usually like 5 or 10 people will be in there for the opening act or whatever. And we had the house about 2/3 full to full most of the time, which is just amazing to begin with. People just couldn't believe it. And so, yeah, it went really well. A couple of times we could have did encores, the call for an encore. We just didn't do it, though, because Metallica had a set that, was time certain, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they had to have a half hour to set up this big stage set. They had like a big statue and everything. So it was pretty cool.
How does it sound, guys? Does it sound okay? Is it loud enough? You can hear that. You can hear the thing rolling around the, So right off the bat, my initial impression is it's weird. He seems a little disarmed. Like he's not like full on, like, you know what I think it is? On the MTV interviews, he's on TV projecting himself out for millions of people. This is like an interview that no one's going to like see. Like no one's seeing him. We're really getting a glimpse of Glenn interacting backstage behind the scenes. His guard isn't all the way up the way it is in those MTV interviews. Oni says 1988 was still close to the Samhain years, and probably the amount of touring and press probably had to be more professional. Sounds like a glass table or an ashtray in the you're gonna, guys, again, this recording is dinky, and that's not a slight on Greg or anything. Greg probably didn't think he'd be digitizing this for something called YouTube in 32 years later. So we just got to be thankful that we got the interview and yada yada yada.
Over there aware of the band?
Yeah.
I mean, this was the first time you've been there on such a band tour.
Yeah. Yeah, people were more aware. A lot of people didn't know the stuff off the new record. Only the people that could afford the import, which was a few of them because it was like #1
The album or the single?
The album.
The album?
The album.
Holy shit, that's great.
But that's like real expensive. I think it was equivalent to like 20 or 25 American dollars for the import. Yeah, our record company over there is a real. That's over it better.
So now what? There's going to be a tour here?
Yeah.
And that's what, a headliner thing?
Yeah, like clubs and
Clubs.
stuff like that, and halls and whatever, they book us into.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, they supported Metallica, who again are much bigger than they are. And again, Metallica's audience, I kind of was like saying like before, like, oh, Metallica didn't record the Black Album yet. But I mean, even still, Metallica was already conquering the world, right? Like they were still, I don't know that much about Metallica. I'm not super in depth on Metallica. I just know that Metallica becomes Metallica when the Black Album comes out. But Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets are very impactful, successful albums, and that's that era, right? This is the era that Glenn is supporting them on. And those guys being big fans of Samhain, they're sort of, doing that kind of thing. So
yeah. How extensive? Just East Coast or everywhere?
No, everywhere.
Oh. Do you prefer that? Do you prefer to do like a headliner in clubs as opposed to an open? You probably do.
It's who the people are there for.
Yeah.
It's like when we do a show with Metallica or Slayer, we have our audience there, but usually the main people are there to see the headline. Because sometimes, it hasn't happened that much. We usually get advertised when we play with somebody like Slayer because it's an added draw. We help sell tickets.
Do you have a problem with any of the the more like stupider fans of the Slayer show, kind of not into it or whatever?
No, the only place we had a problem was in Chicago. We didn't have a sound crew with us, and Slayer was supposed to let us use their crew. We had agreed to that beforehand. We did like 4 shows with them, and they didn't give us any in LA, and that wasn't a problem. But then in Chicago, John took off his one guitar and grabbed his other one, and it was out of tune, and that was just screwed. And then Chuck's drum broke in another song, and there was nobody there to fix it. He didn't even have the equipment handy that he.
It's funny. I feel like Slayer and Danzig are like they're frenemies. They have a long history of going back, like where 1 minute they're cool and the next minute it's kind of like it's like caress me on this cheek and slap me on the other, that kind of thing. Which most recently culminated when Slayer made fun of Danzig for the Fun Fest debacle involving the French onion soup. So they posted a can of French onion soup, something ridiculous like that. But this is very similar to what Jerry was speaking about. If you haven't seen 1979, go check it out. This is very similar to what Jerry was talking about in that radio thing, that clip from wherever I got it on YouTube, just about how bands, when bands don't support other bands, and how the Damned really, screwed over the Misfits in that. Yes, they were super awesome to, at last moment's notice, bring them on the tour and even offer to pay them, even if it wasn't what they agreed to initially. But were really obnoxious about lending gear out, because they didn't want the Misfits to sound that great or as good. It's like, okay, you're going to come on the tour, fine, but you're not going to sound better than us. We're going to sound the best. I guess kind of makes sense. But, the Misfits would ultimately get their revenge, not revenge, but revenge, years later. I mean, the Misfits had the last laugh when the Damned opened up for them at Madison Square Garden. It's so funny.
Do it himself, and it just cut into time, and then Slayer goes, can't give them any time to think at all, because they can't think. All they think is, Slayer. So that was the only time. The other times,
Glenn's cool.
We had encores, and Slayer were like, I can't believe this. I've never heard anyone yell anything but Slayer at our shows.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
amazed.
That's good because we had. I think you talked to him about that on the phone. We had gone to the show at the Felt Forum, and it was just so obnoxious. The Slayer people.
There were so many New York fans there, and they felt kind of like, we want to see the show too, so shut up, you Slayer.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely some rivalry.
Yeah.
I can't,
Yeah. Now, when you do the the round that you're going to do, are you going to have an opening act?
we're not going to bring anybody with us.
No.
I want they wanted to throw Circus of Power on the tour with us, and I was just like, I never heard of them, and I don't care about them. I'd rather have a local.
Funny, Circus of Power. Speaking of, we were talking about Joe Truck earlier, who's Greg's friend. Joe Truck would eventually play guitar in Circus of Power. So how about that?
Strong act come in and let them play in front of a lot of people. That's what we've always done.
Mm-hmm.
With Samhain, we used to take any band we liked.
Maurice.
We played with before, on a bill, we would take them for 4 or 5 gigs and let.
Remember when we were reading that Little Fiend thing by Maurice frontman Sean Garrison, who would later front King Horse. That was one of those bands that Samhain took on the road with them and kind of treated them like roadies, apparently, according to Pete Damian Marshall.
Come on to it because we thought that people should see them.
Service Power.
Yeah.
They're okay.
Yeah. I've never. Erie played me the tape in the van because Rick Sales put it down. And I didn't like it. It was I don't know.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's more biker rock kind of stuff.
And I guess the basic question would be I'm curious about how the change from Samhain to Danzig came about.
You can hear, so interesting, Greg, that you're going. I feel like Greg is slowly. It's like he's trying to he's treating Glenn like the frog in the boiling water. He's slowly turning the temperature up to see if Glenn will notice or not. He's saying, how was the transition from Samhain into Danzig? And then, oh, hey, how is the transition from Misfits into Samhain to sneak in that those Misfits questions, of which, Greg is a fiend club member. Remember, just 6 years prior, Greg called Glenn up on WMFU and was telling him that he was a big fan and yada yada yada, or asked him what his favorite horror movie was. And now here he is, interviewing him years later, second time. Interesting.
How you shifted projects.
By the way, I have here's an interesting question. Was this photo I have to ask Greg next week. Was this photo that's for the video, was this photo taken at the Geffen offices or was it taken backstage at a show? It must have been at a show because Glenn has his shirt off. Did Glenn take his shirt off for the interview at Geffen Records? Why is Glenn's shirt off? It must be a show. It's got to be a picture from a show.
Well, basically, it came down. That's the story there. Should I repeat that?
I guess so.
All right.
Okay, for the record.
So Rick came down to the music seminar, which we were doing Chris Williamson. He saw the band and wanted.
I'm so sorry. One last thing. Yeah, Oni is right. In 1988, they didn't have enough material yet. I don't think until Danzig 2 is really out, and surely by Danzig 3, they still have Misfits and Samhain songs instead. They're doing Mother of Mercy. They're doing London Dungeon. They're doing To Walk the Night. They're doing Horror Business. They're doing these songs because they got to fill in the set with the Danzig 1 material. There are gaps between the Danzig 1 material. We got to fill it in. And these are some of my favorite live shows. This is when you get to hear John Christ really shredding on Misfits Samhain songs. I mean, just crushing it. So this is the story now about the transition from Samhain to Danzig.
To sign us, and at that time we were talking to a bunch of labels.
Hold on, I'm just gonna take it back.
Well, basically, it came down. That's the story there. Should I repeat that?
Repeat it.
All right.
Okay, for the record.
So Rick came down to the music seminar, which we were doing Chris Williamson.
Last Samhain show.
Wanted to sign us, and at that time we were talking to a bunch of labels. We decided to go with Def Jam because we really liked the the way Rick, approached our band. He knew a lot of stuff about the band the other labels didn't. It was really good commitment there, and we just decided to do that. And eventually,
And according to Damien, when I spoke to him, said Rick came up to him and criticized his guitar playing, trying to do the whole divide and conquer, because in Rick's mind, Damien was good as gone in that moment when he's trying to sign Glenn. He's like, all right, let's get rid of these other two guys.
we knew we needed a new guitar player, and I wanted to get rid of the drummer. And we tried to make do with the drummer, and just couldn't happen. So we got Biscuits, and then decided to do a name change because it wasn't the same band anymore. But we wanted to keep the skull and some of the other stuff.
So there you go, right there. And yeah, so London was in the band for a period of time after Pete had left, after Damien had left, and that's when he joined Greg's friend's band, the Brain Eaters. That's when Damien joined that band. They tried to make it work with London. So London did rehearse with John Christ and Erie and Glenn. And eventually they got Chuck Biscuits. When I guess Ruben asked him if he could have any drummer, which one would you have? And he said Chuck Biscuits or Filthy Phil from Motorhead. And so Chuck Biscuits it was.
Because it still had a relevance to what we're doing.
What do you think is the biggest difference between the two bands? I mean,
Between Samhain and
like direction-wise or whatever.
and Danzig, I don't know. It's not. I wouldn't say there's that much difference. I think the songs are more. Let me see. I don't want to say less experimental because we're experimenting with a lot of different stuff. It's just different, you know what I mean? But
it's interesting, man. It's so interesting to hear him say all this stuff. Like when if I had to answer that question, I would say the arrangements, right? Because here's the thing: if you listen to Final Descent, for those of you who have Final Descent, you listen to the back end of Final Descent. You got those Samhain. There was going to be a fourth Samhain album called Samhain Grim, and that's when Twist of Cain. Possession is my favorite Danzig and Samhain song. Love that song. Yeah, Twist of Cain, Possession, Lords of the Left Hand, and Trouble, right? But really in Twist of Cain, you look at Twist of Cain and Danzig, look at the Twist of Cain of Samhain, same thing with Possession. And boy, it's the connective tissue. It's you can hear he's approaching. I guess I think about it in reverse. I don't think about it moving forward. When he does that stuff that you can hear on Final Descent, he's singing Danzig songs like they're Samhain songs, even though I know that's the reverse of it because Samhain came first. But that's what it is. He's using that guttural Samhain growl to do Twist of Cain. Which is, again, it does, I think he's right. It is, Samhain was way more experimental, even though they're experimenting. But the thing that Glenn's not saying and probably doesn't want to admit is that they're experimenting with a commercial sound. Danzig is more commercial than Samhain. Danzig is a type of band that might have a shot at getting radio play. Samhain is never going to be played on the radio. And eventually they would be played on the radio with Mother, they got a top 40 hit with Mother. So there you go. And Mother was written in 1988. So they are experimenting, but they're experimenting in the other direction, not going more avant-garde or whatever you would call that. It's more, commercial. We're experimenting with being more commercial. And that's really when Samhain ceases to exist and we're going to be Danzig instead.
I'd say that there's a bigger difference between, like, say, the Misfits and Danzig. Then you can see a real big difference.
So it's Glenn who actually name drops the Misfits and not Greg. How about that?
Samhain is kind of like, you can see, like, some of the stuff is more, in the new record is more roots kind of oriented. And there's some of that in Samhain, but if you go all the way back to the Misfits, it's like just, fast crazy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's more of an, it's still brutal and dark, but it's kind of an up-tempo kind of feel to it, you know, with the melody
Poppy.
and stuff. And if you still take Misfits and Danzig, it's just like,
Yeah, but you know what's funny is that so many of those Misfit songs they're almost pop songs. Like, look at Walk Among Us, man. Like, there's like a pop sensibility to the music. It's got hooks. It's catchy. That's why it appeals to more than just punkers. It appeals to so many different people. Look at all the different people that listen to the Misfits. Even in like for instance, you know, I saw somebody posting in one of the Facebook groups the other day about CeeLo Green covering Mother, and it's like, yeah, dude, CeeLo Green is like, you know, a rap dude primarily, but that dude, I mean, that's what it's not like you have to listen to the music that you make. That's kind of a stupid thing for me to say. That's not what I mean, but you know, I'm just trying to, it's just supposed to be a testament to the fact that so many people love the Misfits, and it partially because the music is very accessible in the sense that it's catchy. It's a catchy music. Samhain is not catchy. I mean, I love Samhain. You guys know how much I love Samhain. It's not catchy music. It's it's an acquired taste, man. It's definitely an acquired taste. You don't throw on The Shift or The Howl and just like, yeah, the shift starts. You know, like, you just don't do that. Hold on, we got some comments here. London was in the early, yes. London was in the early Danzig rehearsals. In an interview, he said they were doing AC/DC grooves and Slayer style drumming on some. You can hear some of this on Final Descent. Interesting. There's a rehearsal cassette. They taped one of the rehearsals in 1987. I believe that is London on drums with John Christ on guitar. And there's a bunch of songs with weird titles and stuff. And they do Possession. By the way, another example of what I was talking about before about how Twist of Cain, the Samhain Twist of Cain sounds different from the Danzig Twist of Cain. Again, look at Mephisto Waltz on Collection 2, which is recorded when Danzig is transitioning from Samhain into Danzig. And he's more Samhain than he is Danzig. And you go, this isn't Misfits, this is friggin' Samhain. It's like they recorded and snuck a Samhain song onto Collection 2. It's so funny. It's funny, I think. Two Eyes Production says, and then remember, it's actually the Danzig lineup recording Samhain songs for Final Descent 2. Well, it's that one track. There's one track. I forget what, Death in Its Arms, maybe? Death in Its Arms is recorded by the Danzig, Lucifuge era Danzig. Everything else, like those other songs, like Descent and that sort of jazz, that's using drum. Those are drum machines, as far as I know. Steve, hi Steve, welcome to the show. You know, if more of you, I remember Steve. You know, more of you should do that, so I know who I'm speaking to, because I see your handles. I don't necessarily connect the name to the handle. Like John Voice of Doom was like Milton the Monster. I was like, whoa, that's John Voice of Doom. I had no idea. Eric says, see, Eric is very on Front Street with his name. He's Eric Welteroth. You don't think any of the Samhain stuff could have been considered or accessible or even possibly radio friendly with better production? All right. God, that is an interesting question. Let's think about that. Let's dissect that for just a moment. Just a moment. All right. Let's think of some songs. Maybe Archangel. Okay. Ready? Robbie. I don't know if Robbie's out there, but Robbie, next time I talk to Robbie, I got to tell him about this. Robbie, imagine Archangel, but done new wave. A new wave Archangel. That would be interesting, because here's the thing. Samhain is rooted in post-punk death rock music. It's rooted in Bauhaus. It's rooted in Alien, Sex Fiend, you know, and this stuff is kind of like a cousin to new wave music in the fact that, you know, the drumming, some of the drumming stuff and the synthesizer stuff. And, he experiments with that a little bit on like Black Dream and Macabre and yada, yada, yada. But Archangel is like a new wave track, man. Like, a little bit, or it could be. Dude, Archangel. I'm not going to try and do that. Sorry. But I would love for someone I would love to see a cover of Archangel through the prism of a new wave band, like softcore, not softcore, soft. What's that band? Soft, Tainted Love. What soft, something, whatever. You know what I'm saying, though. That would be funny. Death and its. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, God, we lost. Hold on. So many comments. Hold on 1 second. To Walk of Eric. I totally agree, man. To Walk the Night is definitely okay. So, all right. So there's a few exceptions to the rule, Eric, but overwhelmingly, the 25 or 26 Samhain songs are not very commercial, radio commercial. And again, we're talking about doing that if we were to re-record them in a style of music that is more commercial, like new wave. But yes, To Walk the Night as like imagine To Walk the Night if it was done by Jesus and the Mary Chain or Sisters of Mercy. And then like to walk the night, with the to feel no love. Like that's what I want to see. And then it goes like those heavy sort of I don't have the language to describe it. And you have like that, just like that it's almost like whoever would do this would be like an English band. I have always wondered my whole life long. Sorry, I'm butchering this, but like modern English, modern English covering To Walk the Night. All right, that's what I'm talking about. Sorry for butchering those songs. I was like trying to think on the fly as I was singing. I was like really messing that up. A little embarrassed, not gonna lie. To Evilive says, don't forget both versions of Lords of the Left Hand. Yes, I believe Lords of the Left Hand, the newer version is a drum machine. That's not Chuck Biscuits. The only song which sounds like a Lucifuge song, which somebody on here schooled me. I think it was Peter. Peter schooled me on this. That Death in Its Arms was actually an outtake from Lucifuge. It was supposed to be on Lucifuge, which blew my mind. I don't remember the whole story behind that. If anybody else knows, please fill in the blanks for me. And then the second hand of Lords of the Left Hand is my favorite. I love that song. That's when I think of Samhain Grimm. I think about that and Possession. And I'm like, holy crap, I want a whole album of Samhain Grimm. I love the way the drums are on the original. It's kind of like it's just way faster, more aggressive. At war with the planets, at war with all mankind. Like the newer version is like, it's almost like hip hop with those those programmed drum beats. I'm not gonna do that either. Heaven, yeah, sorry. So sorry. Mother of Mercy. Absolutely. Okay. You know what? Eric, I want to tip my hat to Eric. He's changing my mind. Let's do a To Walk the Night, Mother of Mercy, Archangel. Okay, maybe just those three songs. All could totally be like done in a way for commercial radio. And I would love to hear Mother of Mercy. Mother of Mercy would work in the same way as the what was the other song that To Walk the Night, like modern English kind of doing it, or some sort of English new wave band covering it. Death in Its Arms. Death in Its Arms, my favorite song to get a lap dance to. Wow, it's Eric. It sounds like you have some experience with that. Why are you kidding? Not She Rides? Where's the She Rides, man? Come on. Oni is laughing. What's up, Kevin? See, Kevin's a musician here. Okay. And I would love to see that, Kevin. I would love to see Archangel be a pop song. And you know what? Again, I'm taking back what I said. I think there is some like I think there's some merit to that. My original statement is not a good one. It's not a correct one. There is Samhain could, but here's the thing though. Okay, guys, let's look at it like this. Now take the Misfits stuff. Could the Misfits stuff ever really be new wavy in the way that we're talking about with this stuff? No, I don't think so. London Dungeon is like a death rock song that then would translate to the same sort of new wavy stuff that we're talking about. But like attitude, you got some fucking attitude. I can't believe what's said. You know what I mean? Like it's just that is more, or it's just more. It's more doo-woppy, I guess. You know, though some of those songs would translate more to like the 50s style of rock and roll, I guess. I believe John Christ did the solos on Descent. So John Christ might have, but the only Steve, here's what I'm saying. The only song to feature all 4 Danzig members during the Loose the Fuge lineup is Death in Its Arms. And then, as I recall, what Pete said to me, and I could be wrong, somebody said it to me in one of the episodes, Death in Its Arms is was originally meant for Loose the Fuge. Soft Cell, that's the band I was thinking of talking about covering Archangel. I want to hear the Soft Cell version of Archangel. That would be super sick. Yeah, the 12-inch club mix. Thank you, Kevin. Soft Cell. John, Voice of Doom, says London recommended John Christ for the band. Ah, interesting. He was a family friend from Baltimore. I did not know that. Glenn London also worried Glenn wouldn't like him playing with us. Erie recommended London to Voice of Doom. Interesting. Huh. Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. I was told the sound went out. That is such a bummer. I don't know. Where did I leave off? Why didn't anybody tell me this? Well, you all did tell me this, I guess. I was just catching up in the comments. Can you hear me now? Can you? Oh, yes, you can. Oh, my God. Where did I leave off? Where could you not hear me? Just so we could fill this in real quick and then move on. We got a lot of ground to cover, people. Where did I leave off? Does anybody remember? It's this headset. I need to get a new headset, man. Does anybody know? Anybody know? Anybody know? I'll just keep. So annoying. If anybody can tell me. Well, this is so funny because I'm not looking at the comments. It goes, audio is out. Where is sound? No audio. Sound went. I think your audio is dead. You're going to have to start over again. Yes, no sound. Now you can. Yep. Yeah. You're back. It was around London and John Christ. Okay, let me go back up to that comment. So sorry, guys. Consider Samhain a pre-Misfits track. Oh, yeah. So John, Voice of Doom, was saying London recommended John Christ for the band. He was a family friend from London. Was also worried Glenn. Oh, right. We already saw that part. So Kevin. Oh, so what Kevin was saying, Kevin considered Archangel to be a pre-Samhain track. I guess I agree with that too, actually, because Glenn didn't know what Samhain was going to be when he was writing that song, at least not to our knowledge, right? Like he knew it was not something that was not the Misfits. He didn't have a name for it. Maybe he had been stockpiling material. Who knows how old some of those other songs might have been. Maybe he had the fragments as early as 1981 when he wrote Archangel. I don't know. None of us know. But it fits in the same sort of no man's land as Mephisto Waltz does, if you think about it. Steve says, according to Misfit Central, after Danzig moved to LA from Lodi, so it was in 88, Glenn Danzig, Eerie Von, and John Christ recorded The Birthing and A Slow Left Hand, later mixed in June of 1990. You're right, but I'm saying that the only track to feature all four of them is that track. Misfit songs at their core, pure pop. Yes, exactly, dude. Pure, Kevin, exactly. Pure freaking pop. I agree. To Evilive. Yes, I was right. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm not right. It's just my audio is dead. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right, guys. Let's get back to this interview. That was a fun tangent, though.
I guess that kind of answers one of the questions I was thinking, which is if the Misfits, you ever felt the Misfits became like an albatross that like people would never let you.
Ooh, good question.
No.
No, obviously it hasn't. Yeah, because if you say that Danzig is getting the response that it's getting it
Well,
because
even with Samhain, when we went out with Samhain, me and Eerie had decided, we wanted to do something different, something with more of a commitment to playing instruments and writing better songs and that kind of stuff. And we had like doubled and tripled our audience in some markets, whereas it took years for the Misfits to even reach a level where we could even go out on the road. Tour. Of course, the climate was different too. A lot of people were more aware of what was going on.
Right. Yeah, they kind of were starting from nothing with the Misfits. Samhain. Definitely, it's probably to the merit of the music of Samhain. But come on, dude. Like you're going out with Samhain, Glenn, Uncle Glenn. You're going out with Samhain on the clout of the Misfits, man. Come on, give the Misfits some credit. And the Misfits built itself up from nothing. You guys built yourself up from nothing. You recorded all those goddamn singles, and they stuck around. Do I think that the songs of Samhain were originally supposed to be for the Misfits? Well, it's known that some of them were. Some of them were supposed to be for were taken from Samhain and used in the Misfits for Earth AD. So
Samhain in half a year did what it took the Misfits about 7-8 years to do.
Samhain did. Come on, dude. Like, that's such BS, Glenn. I got to call Glenn on his BS. This is BS, man. Totally. Misfits momentum was built. Of course it was. And then Metallica. Come on. This is this is Glenn sort of trying to weave his own narrative here,
Which was pretty wild. And then with the release of the last Samhain record, it was just all of a sudden record companies wanted, knew about us and, wanted a piece of the action or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was kind of gratifying.
Yeah.
Because me and Eerie had set like this limit. We said 2 years we'll, have record companies trying to get us, big deal. And if not, we're still on Plan 9 and we'll be selling lots of records.
So he says,
I'm really curious about that.
So he says, if not, we'll still be on Plan 9 selling lots of records. Now, here's the thing. Here's a weird, interesting thing to think about, people. Think about this. We've talked, again, obviously redundantly, because this is redundant because we've literally hashed out so many of these topics to death. Glenn, I've talked about how Glenn has built the perfect network, the perfect distribution network, right? Literally the perfect distribution network. He took Plan 9. He got distribution for Plan 9, but he was in complete control, and he was directly connected with the fan base, and he was selling crazy amounts of records during the Samhain time. I would imagine his numbers must have been excellent, right? This model at the time might not have been as desirable, even though he has the most control. Why? Because in the 80s, the 80s is like the height well, really, I guess it would really peak in the 90s, right? It would peak in the 90s, and then Napster would destroy the entire model. But this idea of being a working artist, that, you know, your day job was that you were a musician. Erie's day job was that he was a musician, like on that kind of level. You know, this was the thing to go get signed, get the advance, record the album, go out, tour on the album, do it all over again, wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again. Right. That is not ideal for musicians today. And musicians out there, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not a musician, but that's not ideal anymore because record labels don't really mean shit in the age of the internet. Oops, I cursed. Record labels don't really mean nothing in the age of the internet. B, the internet has taken that model that Glenn had the analog version of and sort of made it even more effortless and easy for you if you have a good content, a good product, and you know your way around production of any kind. If you could shoot your own music videos, if you could record your own music, if you get yourself out there, if you keep creating content, you can build a presence on the web and be connected to every single niche that would be in your music. This was not the case at the time. However, what is fascinating is that today, I think what Glenn had then is every music would be every maybe independent artist's wet dream at this point, to have a network set up the way, and obviously not the analog kind, like a digital version of that. And I mean, a lot of bands most certainly do. I think every band actually kind of honestly does. But you have to think every band that's doing this today, they're doing so. It's like this independent model. But it was like, this started with like punk rock, man. This really started with punk rock. And it wasn't even, it's not like bands like the Ramones. The Ramones were signed to Sire Records. The Sex Pistols were signed to EMI. Where did they get kicked off EMI? We're talking about the hardcore bands and the Black Flags and the Misfits and these bands that sort of came up and fostered deep, meaningful connections with their fans in ways that no punk band had before. Dead Boys, not the Dead Boys. Dead Boys were on Sire, not Patti Smith, not Television, not Richard Hell and the Voidoids. So it's kind of interesting to think that this model that I would imagine would be a wet dream today, because essentially the record label just becomes a middleman. Oh, we got to recoup our advance. We gotta wet our beak. Today record deal contracts, because of the way things are. Sorry, this is such a tangent. The way that things are today, they get a piece of merchandise on the road. They get, all sorts of stuff because they need their bite. For what? And it's the same thing. I'm in the film world, and you know what? Distribution deals are kind of BS at this point. It's a validation. Oh, we're signed. Oh, we have distro. It doesn't mean anything anymore. And so what's kind of interesting is I wonder, and I guess Glenn kind of still has this whole network set up, but I would imagine that for Glenn today, it would be a lot less appealing to be on a label than it would be to simply still have Plan 9 Records if it existed. That's all I'm saying. Steve says, I like how it was me and Erie back then. Right, because literally like a year before, Rick Rubin's like, let's get rid of Erie. And Glenn's like, no, we're not getting rid of Erie. So yes, I agree, Chris. I agree. Much more driven now versus album sales. Yeah. Yep. Bands giving away albums to get people to come to the shows. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. And again, I say this, and I say this I don't want to insult any musicians on here. And that's what I'm about to say is like a cold, hard truth that I don't agree with at all and wish was not a reality. The reality is, because of Napster, because of digital media, because intellectual property can be digitized and put out onto the internet, no matter what, my movies, your music, free for whoever wants it. And so you need to find another way to make revenue off of your art, and that's where, Steve is saying bands giving away albums. I think that's the wrong attitude to have about it. I think, Jerry Only has a really good attitude about it. In Jerry Only's mind, for a guy who everybody calls so greedy and so money hungry and whatnot, I know I'm a big Jerry apologist. I've sort of changed my tune about him over the years. I used to feel this. I used to bash Jerry all the time, thinking he was, I don't know. I've changed my tune about Jerry for a lot of reasons. But Jerry says the music is essentially free. It's like, he's thinking about how can I make the packaging so great that people are going to buy this? How much can I put into the physical craft of something that someone needs to actually pay me for it? The DIY ethic still lives on today online. Yes, Chris, 100%.
That if in all the times of all your projects, if record companies ever were seeking you out, just because there always was that like underground buzz about you, and a lot of times you're smart and always tune into that.
CBS once wanted to sign us both here and in various times, but they also wanted to change the music around.
When he's talking about CBS the first time, that was in England right after Joey Image left the band because he was junkie, and they were left in England without a drummer. And had they had a drummer, they would have auditioned for CBS, or they were supposed to, and they would have toured with The Clash.
And I was just like, no. Sorry. So that was it.
Did you ever, in the interim also, I was wondering too, if you ever were approached by other bands to join somebody else's project?
Interesting.
Yeah.
The guys from Minor Threat, once their band collapsed, wanted me to sing for them. I went down and tried to work it out, and it just wasn't working.
So you did consider it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really crazy. So he's like, the way he's saying it, it's not saying like they were trying to form. It's not like those guys were trying to be in Samhain, which is how I always heard it, that they were going to be in something that would have been like Samhain, but rather that Glenn would have been trying to sing for Minor Threat. Well, that is a weird.
And I was just like, no. Yeah. Sorry. So that was it.
Hold on.
We'll, have record companies trying to get us, big deal. And if not, we're still on Can 9 and we'll be selling lots of records.
I was really curious about that. If in all the times of all your projects, if record companies ever were seeking you out, just because there always was that like underground buzz about you, and a lot of times you're smart and always tune into that.
CBS once wanted to sign us both here and in various times, but they also wanted to change the music around. And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
Sorry. So that was it.
Did you ever, in the interim also, I was wondering too, if you ever were approached by other bands to join somebody else's project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guys from Minor Threat, once their band collapsed.
All right, so saying once their band collapsed, that doesn't mean that. Hold on.
I sing for them. I went down and tried to work it out, and it just wasn't working.
So you did consider it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When she says you did consider, is she saying you did consider going singing for Minor Threat? Does that mean that Ian and who's the drummer? Guy Picciuto? Who's the drummer of Minor Threat? That would mean that Ian and Guy left, or Guy Picciuto left Minor Threat, and that they were going to try and fill in Minor Threat with Glenn Danzig. Pod says, imagine Glenn McKay. Yeah, that'd be funny.
Eventually, well, they were doing that also.
Right, they were in the Meat Men.
They had all these things going, and they wanted to do their own band and not do the Meat Men and this other stuff. And they just, too many ideas. It was like Brian Baker and Lyle. And I don't know. It was just a real tension between those two guys. And I was just like, the songs were like 5 different parts that were just totally different from each other. So it wasn't a real song. It was just like 5
You're right.
ideas, and they weren't being
Thank you.
objective about it. They were like, I wrote it, it's good. You know what I mean? And that's not the case. You can write shit, you know what I mean? And they were just not being objective about the stuff they wrote. So,
You see this
So, right. So, as Kevin says, a post Minor Threat band, the drummer was Jeff Nelson with a J. You know, I think I have his number. I think I have Jeff Nelson's cell phone number because is that the same guy? No. No. That's the other guy. Okay, never mind. I'm wrong. Yeah, okay. So I guess that is sort of like, oh, interesting. Huh. I thought that I guess I was wrong. I read that whole situation wrong. But those guys couldn't be objective about their songwriting, according to Glenn, bringing in a song and maybe didn't want to hear, any sort of criticism about it. That it's just automatically good because they're automatically the guys from Minor Threat. Meatmen, they do rule. I guess they're in a new hardcore documentary. Did not know that.
I think also is more of a showcase for your voice. Because it seems like with this, your voice has more of a prominence. Like I always felt like, especially live, like if you look at this old Misfits live tapes or whatever, sometimes your voice got drowned out. Or whatever.
yeah,
Well,
that was a problem that we were getting in the Misfits. A lot of people coming back and saying it just sounds like noise and you can't hear the vocals. I don't know what song you're doing and stuff like that. And the guys in the band didn't care really. I mean, they weren't tuning their guitars before they went on stage. They didn't really care about any of that stuff. And that's one of the reasons that the band, just eventually.
Interesting how he cites that as the reason, because literally like a year earlier, he cited a bunch of other reasons, I think including a little bit of that in the Pusset interview.
Yeah, the new band, what Rick wanted to do is that people should be hearing what you're saying. And I agree.
Okay, that's another huge difference between Samhain and Danzig. I think the vocals are not as in front in Samhain as they are in Danzig. Danzig, the vocals are super in front, right? Like, or however you want to put it. They're right up front of the mix. In Samhain, everything is so much more buried. I don't know how you would call that. Maybe it's the way that it's mixed. Maybe that's how Glenn intended it. But in Danzig, the vocals are 100% the showcase. In the same way, it's kind of interesting too, is that the Static Age material is kind of like that too, in the sense that, all of the music feels, when I listen to like Static Age, I feel like all the music, like it's there sonically, but it's all like here. And then like the voice is like up here. Like his voice is like right here at all times.
You should hear, the vocals. And Erie was always saying that you should hear the vocals more.
You do.
Definitely, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing that with the new record I think really strikes people the most.
And that's the most appealing.
Yeah,
too.
of course. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's what you really tune into.
Yeah.
A lot of people are tuning into the whole band. The buzz that I'm getting is that, like, for once we have like a real guitar player in the band, and a drummer too, a great drummer. It's like a real band. So I think that helped us also on the Metallica and Slayer dates. It's like a real band. You can't deny it. You may not know the songs, you're not familiar with it, whatever, but it's like a real band up there playing. Like, it doesn't rely on like death, murder, destruction, and mosh, and go fast in a million miles an hour, just. So people will relate to that.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, when you played the Felt Form, I thought that if you had just started playing out and stuff, you didn't get that impression. I mean, it really did feel like you guys played together very solidly. It didn't seem like you were trying.
They were a tight band, dude. They were just that band was so tight, that original lineup. They were, again, no disrespect to any other Danzig lineup. That first band was tight.
And find your writing seat real control.
Because it's a good band.
Well, the first single was Mother, and did you? Right?
I don't have a copy of it, so I don't know.
The first single, Glenn, is Mother. That's because it's getting, it's getting
Mother.
at least on like the college stations and stuff like that. Is there any signs of it in this world? Is it getting onto normal radio, commercial?
Yeah, it is.
radio,
It's on like
whatever?
30-something stations.
Is it?
Yeah, like stations like NEW kind of
It is,
stations
yeah.
across the country.
But not NEW.
I think NEW plays it. This is
Like
what I've
2
been
in the
told.
morning or something.
I don't know. Well, in between the Grateful Dead and Bruce
Right.
Springsteen, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Did you ever think you would hear Glenn Danzig say the words Grateful Dead? My God.
Yeah, really.
I'm not positive.
Does that kind of stuff like concern you? I mean, does it matter to you?
No, I'd rather let them hear us than fucking Foreigner.
He hates Foreigner.
Station that wants to play our stuff, fine with me. I don't care. Music is made for people to hear it, not to be buried somewhere. That's the thing I never liked about the punk thing, and especially like Maximum Rock and Roll and all those magazines. It was just like, this is punk and it's just for us.
Yeah.
Well, who's us? It's everybody.
He's still, all these years later, he's still stewing about Maximum Rock and Roll. It's like, dude, you're signed to Def Jam, you're opening for Metallica. Who cares about Maximum Rock and Roll at that point? Let it go, Glenn.
It's not, just for these people. They don't like when bands break out of the club circuit, but then they also go, oh, this band broke up too soon, before their time. Yeah, because they had no money, they couldn't get out of the club market, and all of a sudden everyone's, oh, you're all hat, and we're not going to pay you anymore, and all this other stuff. And
That's, I think when he's saying that, I think he's thinking about the Misfits. Everything he just said, I think he's thinking about the Misfits when he said that. So much so to a point that he probably just got he would get sick and tired of being asked questions about the Misfits. And, starting in like 91, 92, 93 or something, like all the way up until, at least Danzig and Doyle was like, don't ask Glenn Danzig about the Misfits unless you want to suffer his wrath.
they don't understand. They should be happy if their band breaks out, because then that just makes it easier for other bands to break out, and then eventually radio or whatever will change. At least even if it changes like 10 or 20.
Maximum Rock and Roll wrote a bunch of critical things about the Misfits. I don't remember exactly what it was. We've covered it here before. It really began after the San Francisco El Kabong Doyle cracking a kid over the head with a guitar incident. After that, the Misfits were enemies of the state when it came to Maximum Rock and Roll. And the Misfits, Glenn, as you just said, he felt like, this idea of nonconformists conforming to something, and if you don't, then you're not a nonconformist like everybody else.
It's still better than not having it change that much at all.
Do you think that that's kind of what's helping the momentum for you this time around, is that radio has become so much more receptive to music with a harder edge, or whatever you want to call it, like with the Guns N' Roses thing happening so big? That's opened a lot of doors.
I don't know. I don't think we sound like
No. Not that you sound like them at all, but I just mean.
You mean that
they've,
they're
like,
being more receptive? They
Yeah.
think there's dollars to be made, so they're going to play this or try and sign this or that.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden everybody
Could be,
that before wasn't on the bandwagon. I mean, also all of a sudden MTV, which before was banning harder rock left, right, and sideways, and all they could play was Whitney Houston and George Michael. Now it's like heavy metal and hard rock is.
Well, they banned our video.
Well, from what I understand, yeah. Did you had to do an edited version?
Well, we did 3 versions that we handed to them, and they didn't accept any of them. Well, the program directors liked them, but the supporters said.
Is he talking about the Misfits music video, or is he talking about just the single? Eric says, I think Glenn started making a stink about being asked Misfits questions when Danzig was 3 albums in and Ricky Rackman was still asking the same Misfits questions he had been answering for years. You might be right, but I think that was also, those guys were friends. And I think that was Ricky was just trolling the crap out of Glenn Danzig. He was egged on probably off stage. That was so done for people wanted to elicit that reaction out of Glenn. That's definitely, and you could see it in other versions of that where like even Glenn's like kind of sounding like, Ricky, don't ask it, I'll kill you. Like, I will kill you, like saying stuff like that. So I think that probably, some of that was kind of going on. He somewhat has a point with the old breaking up, so the new one gets noticed. Wait, he somewhat has a point with the old breaking up, so the new ones get noticed. Interesting. Thanks for the pumpkins, Music Films TV fans. Music Films TV fans. Interesting channel name. Yes. Very true. Okay, let's keep listening.
Spencer's just said no.
Specifically, what was the objection? The last thing? If you cut that out?
No, everything. I mean, this girl had a cross earring on. They wanted that out.
Oh, okay. So they're talking about the music. They're talking about the music video.
Madonna wears cross earrings.
There's a tombstone shadow in the back of this, like, there's 5 girls standing there, and there's just a shadow of a tombstone, like it's got a cross with a circle through it, those kind of things.
Yeah.
That had to be blacked out.
I don't
Never heard of something like this.
So what do
The
you
little insignia that I used to have on my shirt, which is like an upside down cross with the skull in it, they didn't want that in there. They were freaking.
They show Motley Crue
They
videos
show,
with
yeah,
them, like,
all
doing,
this kind of
devil signs
stuff.
and stuff, and they won't show your video.
Oh my, I could see the sacrifice thing, whatever you want to call it. That okay, I understand it. But I can't believe they look that closely and pick. Wow. So
You haven't seen the video?
I think what's happening is the recorder is on a glass table or a marble table, probably glass. And what they're doing is they're drinking drinks and putting them back down. And that's what the clanking is on the glass. That's additionally amplified because I put EQ when I cleaned up this recording for Greg before he uploaded it. I put, EQ and a tube booster, vocal booster compressor on it.
Yeah, I saw it. I think it was really good, but I don't know why it didn't seem that. Like,
I think it's pretty tame. You know.
It is tame. It is tame.
So are you gonna do anything? I mean, are you gonna further edit?
I didn't want to edit it to begin with. I didn't want to put the X's across. I mean, they sent them a copy of black X's across the stuff and all the stuff, blacked out, and they just rejected it. They said they can see too much still.
I hate censors.
Is there any?
They're so stupid.
I'm just so curious how they do these things. Is there any room for argument? Like something
No.
like
They just say, well, we just won't play it.
and there's no degree of saying, for instance, like cross earrings. Madonna wears cross earrings. and
Doesn't
show
matter. They said that
hers?
if she turned it in today, they wouldn't accept it.
They changed those things.
Hypocrisy.
They turned down a Billy Idol video because it had a cross in it. Yeah. And they also turned down Motley Crue had a video for a ballad or something.
Yeah, well, that was because he kills his girlfriend out of love.
Well, yeah, but then they'll play something like Poison's Fallen Angel.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this is obvious what I'm about to say, and it might sound really stupid, but just listening to the way that they're talking about videos and videos for television, like this concept of a music television, and in the same way that we have tablets and phones today, like there were once TVs, it is kind of weird to think that at one point MTV was YouTube or YouTube. Well, yeah, YouTube is now MTV. Makes sense. But to think about it, the back, reverse, imagine YouTube is a place where everything's pre-programmed. You can't search for a video. You just watch whatever is on YouTube. That's kind of like what MTV was. Kind of interesting. And they just keep everything in. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. And also and before that, it's radio for the TV with a visual element. So it's kind of both. It's kind of in between both these things. I don't know. Again, you might be like, hey, Jeff, Captain Obvious, duh. Might sound really stupid, but I don't know. It's crossed my mind.
Makes sense. Maybe they want money. I don't know.
I knew what I was really curious about. I just read yesterday. What is that thing that's coming out now on the Misfits, the album?
Oh, that's just a CD. Somebody bootlegged the CD. They just took the CD down to a mastering lab and made an album of it. Misfits 20-song CD. So to stop the bootleg, we're just putting that out as an album. We didn't want it, or it's either that or people are going to be paying $30 to $50 for this stupid fucking bootleg album.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So if I'm following correctly, Misfits Collection 1 was only available on CD. Somebody turned it into an LP, a bootleg version of it. And so to dispel the demand for clearly they wanted it on vinyl or whatever, they are now pressing it up so that people are not spending outrageous amounts of money on that. But it's like, again, if you follow the given narrative for Glenn Danzig and bootlegs, I wonder if this is where like the source of that animosity really begins with bootleg stuff.
Does that bother you now?
Because Glenn Danzig looks at YouTube, it's like, oh, that's a bootleg, take it down. Like today, like like old Uncle Glenn, like super like ornery, oh, hey, get that bootleg down, like now. But like he's thinking like it's still the 80s, like like, oh, it's a bootleg, thinking that it's a bootleg in the same way. I don't know. I kind of get the gist of that.
Now that like it seems like for so many years there was never any Misfits bootleg material at all on the market, or like very little, and then all of a sudden, like in the last year, you go to any store around here, there's like 20 different albums.
Yeah, it bothers me.
I mean,
That really bothers me, but you have to work. You don't have to work through the system, but that's what we're doing right now. But we have a bunch of cases coming up where we actually cut the people. Really stupid. One guy pressed records at Nashville, which is a pressing plant down south, and they code everything.
Ouch.
It says, like NV Nashville, and it's got the code, and right on the fucking record it says that. So we just like call up and go, can we have the doc number of this and who does it and blah blah blah, and that's it. And they have a guy at the RIAA, which his job is to just look at a record and tell you where it's from. He has records from every pressing plant in America.
Wow.
And he just sits there and he looks at the fucking thing and he goes, this is from such and such pressing plant in California. And then you just call up and find out who pressed it.
I know that Glenn put the records, like he put the sleeves together. Well, actually, he had Robo put the sleeves together. Robo! If you want to sleep tonight, you got to put the sleeves together, But I always wonder, like, how many times has Glenn been fooled by bootlegs? Like, at some point, there has to be an element of like, ownership of expertise where like, there's no way that I wouldn't know that whether I always would know if this was a bootleg or not. That's how, involved I was with the process. But, maybe like looking at not taking enough time to look at it because he wants to look like he really knows what he's talking about, and totally missing a bootleg just going right under his nose in that kind of way. Kevin says, I remember at the Samhain reunion show. That's right. Kevin went to that. I did not go. I missed those shows. I remember at the Samhain reunion show in New York City, he was yelling at people, taking videos on their phones, thinking, oh, you're talking about the Samhain show in 2014. Or unless you're talking about the Danzig Legacy, which I was at. I was at the Danzig Legacy. In any case, Kevin says he remembers at the Samhain reunion show in NYC, he was yelling at people taking videos on their phones, thinking that they were going to sell them on the street. So out of touch. That's what I'm saying, dude. He's just like, that's how it's just, and like, you can't even get mad about it. You can't even get mad about it. It's just like, or like, I wouldn't even like take that seriously. That's just a dude who is not, Glenn doesn't even have a smartphone. He has like a flip phone. He's not with it. He's not with it in that aspect. He's not with it. He doesn't have that sensibility to him. Yes. Robo, the sleeve gluer. That's right. Okay. So it was the Samhain show, in 2014, I'm guessing. Steve says there was also talk back in the day of actually being the one behind some of the bootlegs. Steve, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I don't think Glenn would ever bootleg his own stuff. That's not true. I think that's totally false. 150%, Steve. No way. No way, Jose. Chris says, Doyle is kind of the same way. A little bit. Here's the thing about Doyle. Doyle's like freaking he's like mad at Spotify, you know. And again, this is something that I talk about on that Wolfface Pizza Punk episode that's coming up. We talked all about Spotify. Spotify is a tool, man. It's a tool. I had a whole rant about this on Facebook recently because Doyle posted something. Spotify is a tool for musicians. Going back to what we were talking about before, about the idea of your music being free, you know, in the same way that films are free, because again, you can digitize anything. I'm not going to go into the whole tirade, but my point is this, is that if you have the ability, if you want people to find your music, if you want people to find your brand, you're not just making music, you're building a brand. That's what it is. It's a brand. What is a brand? It's more than just the art. It's the t-shirts. It's the merchandise. It's the whole shebang, shabongo. I can tell you all the bands that I discovered today, they come from Spotify. I'm not an a-hole. I go to the shows. I buy the vinyls. You know, for a long time, my entire wardrobe was t-shirts comprised of band t-shirts. Not everybody is responsible music consumers like that, but Spotify is something that you need, even if they're not paying well. Should musicians get more money? Absolutely. They should be increasing the royalties, and they could afford to do it too, those mother effers. But like, you know, like you're crazy if you're not on Spotify and you want to be a musician. Yes, Bobby Steele bootlegged The Perfect Crime. That came from Bobby was in possession of that recording, and I don't know what happened to the rest of it. Really sad. Shad. Yeah, 2014 sounds about right. It was the Best Buy place. So that was November 1st, where we also saw Danzig Doyle before that hilarious incident in the car. Where we also, are you talking about we as in you and me? Was I with you when we saw Danzig and Doyle? Oh, wait, Kevin and I met at a Danzig show 11 years ago, if you could believe it. This is why you always go to shows alone, because you'll meet people that you still talk to 11 years later. What was the hilarious incident in the car? I don't remember. You got to refresh my memory. I do remember, Kevin. I do remember turning my head to the right, and one big ass dude punched another dude in the face. This was at the Danzig show, and the whole friggin' nose like exploded with blood. It was crazy. Do I watch punk rock NBA? No. I've subscribed to it, and I've seen, that's not true. I've seen one video, but I do not regularly watch it. Why do you ask? Didn't Bobby allude to Glenn doing some bootlegging? Yes, he did. But Bobby has done some bootlegging of his own. Again, The Perfect Crime, we only have because of Bobby. Thank you, Bobby. Yeah, remember we watched oh my God, Kevin, you just made me flash back to something from 11 years ago. I shot it. Remember when iPods had a little camera? I think I shot the video. There's video of that exchange. And then we sped off. Yes, I totally remember it. And there was video of that couple arguing. Apparently I yelled something. I don't even remember. What did I yell? I don't remember what I yelled. Yes, there was a fight. And then someone passed out and fell down in the escalator at the end too. I missed that, but Chris told me. So many crazy. Yeah, it was a crazy show, man. It was a crazy show. Bobby's saying there are bootlegs being released superior quality to the original recordings. I really don't want to talk about this right now, but yeah, supposedly. Well, all I'm going to say to you is this. Where do you think, I was talking about this with Robbie the other day, actually. There might be another reason why the Cough Cool master tapes have not been found. It might be simply because Erie and Glenn recorded over them. And that's why you don't have the original. That's why the vinyl is the only original recording. However, I always surmised possibly that whoever had those master tapes were bootlegging copies of them. And that plant got shut down because they were also bootlegging albums like by the Beatles and stuff. It was a pressing plant on Long Island. That's what I think. I don't know. Yeah, Kevin, I don't know if that green iPod still turns on. It's on there. And yes, as soon as you said that, I thought about the green iPod. I swear. I definitely filmed part of that exchange. I don't remember what I shouted or if I shouted anything at all. I don't remember that part. Chris says he just brings up a very good point with marketing bands and Spotify in general. Who is he? Are you talking about Doyle? I just yelled dirtbag. Well, that is absolutely something that I would do. Truly. And I hope that if I can recover that video, that it's on there. And if I find it, I will let you know. I know where that iPod is. I know. Remember, it was the little iPod Nanos. They had a little camera on it, and that was my iPod. So, yes, let's move on because this will just go on. The pressing plant story does ring a bell because something probably might have happened there. Okay. The punk rock MBA guy brings up very good point with marketing bands and Spotify in general. Chris, would you please link that video for the punk rock MBA in the comment section, or just leave a comment with that video under this video? Because I would love to check that out. Bookmark that for later. Let's move on, people.
Paid for it.
So you are pursuing.
Oh yeah, we already took 2 people down, but we want to take some of the heavy people down because they're making a lot of money. Just 1,000 records at wholesale.
Now, the one thing I will say, Steve, if you were making money, I mean, if somebody else is making a ton of money off of your stuff and you're in a situation where you're not talking to the other former band members, but you're in control of the master tapes, and you end up bootlegging it to try and make money as well, and justify it by the fact that other people are bootlegging and making money off of your stuff. And again, that is so beyond conjecture, so beyond theorizing. Like, I have absolutely no proof. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't know why I just said that. Don't even know if that's true. Don't know anything. I know nothing. I'm just a guy who loves talking about the Misfits, Samhain, and Danzig.
Like $30 retail, 1,000 records at wholesale is $15,000 tax free.
Wow.
That's what they're making, and the store makes another $15,000, or the distributor, whoever handles this stuff. None of the distributor will admit that they're handling it, but we know who they are.
Yeah, really. I wanted to touch back again on the thing we were just talking about with the censorship and all this crap, because this is something we've been real affected by the magazine stuff, because the whole they pull us from the shelves, and all that. And I'm just really curious. I had mentioned to Greg, it's weird that tonight is that Geraldo Rivera special, and
it'll be like a real sensationalist, stupid ratings getting thing. None of the information will be accurate whatsoever.
Although he's supposedly, right, King Diamond is on the show, so it'll be interesting to see like what his.
He's a joke. He's a joke. Go look. Okay, what I just said. They got some stupid goof who just puts on stupid makeup and pretends he's like.
He's really like super relaxed in this interview. This is really cool. This is a really cool side of Glenn Danzig. When we were listening to the Misfits one in '82, he was kind of cool in that one too, but he was more angsty and snotty, like more like teenage, even if he was in his 20s. This is like an interesting, more mature Danzig in a way. I don't know.
And so here we go,
Well, see, that was what I wanted to ask you, like, because it can get serious. I mean, repercussions from something like this, it worries me a little bit, because every time this stuff gets stirred up again, we get pulled off the shelves. And I'm just like really curious, because we talk about this all the time. What if you were like debating Tipper Gore or any of these idiots and stuff, like how would you defend?
I said, fuck with me and I'll fuck with you. They say, if you try to take my freedom away, I will take a gun and blow your head off. I believe it's worth fighting for. And if you don't believe it's worth fighting for, shut your mouth and get the hell off this, podium and shut up.
Okay.
Glenn's so great.
Get in a ring with me. Tear your head off.
Oh, God.
Well, that's what it comes down to. I mean, basically, it's like he's trying to take your rights away.
Yeah.
I mean, now they have that law. I was reading it, that they're going to pass this child pornography, but it kind of opens the door for this other thing, record.
Steve says, I have some friends who ran record stores back in those days who could chime in with some rather interesting tidbits. Let them speak, not I. Would love to hear that. Let them speak, not I.
Recorded music, which is considered obscene for children.
And the decision is
There
left
you
up
go.
to local authorities
Oh,
as to what's obscene.
Local authorities. You go down south.
You know, like a
Yeah.
picture I would say, oh, this has a skull on it. It's got to
Yeah.
be devil's
Yeah.
music, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm just, it's just that, we've heard so many people's, like, Ozzy always gets accused, this kid killed himself because he was that kind of stuff. Like, Greg always says as a defense kind of thing, and a lot of people do. He sees a lot of it as, like, larger than life cartoon kind of entertainment, with superheroes and monsters or whatever you call them, that kind of thing. I'm just curious, do you have a specific...
These are good questions.
Like your defense of a lot of this kind of stuff that's devil related or death related.
I mean, it's like some of this is well tread path, dirt path or whatever, but at least the questions are being posed in interesting ways.
I think that it's like it's ridiculous to even be having to discuss this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but it's like if they don't want their kids listening to their stuff, they should take a more active role in raising their children and saying, I don't want you listening to this stuff.
He said this before.
Well, I want to listen to it. Then they're infringing not only on your rights to produce that music, but also on the kid's right to listen to it or not. And I mean, if this kid kills himself, he doesn't kill himself just because he's listening to that record. He has other problems besides that. I mean, that's obvious, and a psychiatrist will tell you that. But they're not going to bring a psychiatrist in unless it's some guy who says, rock music is making children go crazy. Which they've been saying for years. Well, that's what I mean. They only get people that are going to further their cause, which is just some stupid political thing to get votes anyway.
So cool to hear him do voices.
About, like, the lyrics and kind of thing. I was just curious. Like, the thing that I like the most on the lyrics on this album, there's like I've noticed it in your work in the past too, but it seems like on this album there's like at least a couple of songs like Twisted King and Am I Demon and Possession and Not of This Earth. So where there's like you have this kind of persona of like someone who's in the world, but they're like alien to it, and they're like somehow greater than human. I don't know. It's like it's got this kind of like persona you're singing from. I've noticed you've done it a lot. Is that something you interest you to be like looking out at the world and being different, but like somehow being stronger than that?
I am.
I knew he was going to say that.
See, I'm sure that he does. I'm sure that he really does believe that, but I wonder if, let's see if he answers the question further, but maybe he just didn't want to like explain that all, just like go endlessly, like explaining that, which I don't know. Again, this is Danzig at the beginning of the career of Danzig, who do countless, endless interviews being asked those sort of questions. But this is the very beginning. So Greg is at the first of the line asking a question like that to Glenn. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Also, songwriting is a lot of, storytelling. But also, like, your world isn't my world. I don't know your world really, but it's not my world. This world isn't my idea of a world. So I just live in my own world. And I come into your world once in a while. And I bring my own reality with me. Like, your reality is not my reality. I don't want that reality. Whatever this whole world out here is, I just don't.
Okay, I didn't realize that. So the album at this point is only 2 months old. So this is very. So Glenn is really right out of the gate with Danzig. When did they do the first show? When was the City Garden show?
I don't like it, so it just doesn't become my world anymore. I create my own world for myself that I'm happy with.
People ever give you problems?
I don't give two fucks.
That's the right attitude.
Yeah, well, fuck. I don't really care about other people that much, as far as like whether they approve of what I do or
I can do things with my mind.
Or what I don't do. It doesn't bother me.
So is your like does how your
first you have to do for yourself, and then also for like your audience or whatever, you know. I only have a responsibility to my audience to put out a good record and to do a good live show. That's it.
So wow, Guar did the first ever Danzig show. How about that? Guar did the first ever Danzig show, and then the album came out in August of '88, and the interview was October '88. Huh. And then this magazine came out in March of '89.
Everything else, you know, is ridiculous.
How
So
do
you
you
don't have to worry
perceive
about
your audience? Who do you consider your audience?
I don't know.
You know,
They're just, we have a good, you know, a wide spectrum. It's
Yeah.
like from little kids to, you know, like older people. It's ridiculous. I have this fucking guy the other day. I was buying comic books, and he came in with his nephew, and this guy was about 50. He says, all I buy is Glenn Danzig records and Iggy Pop old records. And he ran down to this music store and bought like $150 worth of records for me to sign. He ran back into the
Wow.
store and he signed all these records.
wow.
And he had his nephew with him too.
His nephew know you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like,
Yeah.
here's this guy, he's about 50 years old, and
Yeah.
his nephew is about like 20 or 22 or whatever. It's pretty wild.
Wow.
How do you like? I don't know if this is like something you like to talk about or anything, but I just so I talked to you a couple of years ago, and this was like before all this happened. I'm just curious. That was like the one thing I
So
wanted to know. Like,
So Greg first interviewed Glenn when he was still in Samhain at the Danceteria show, which Greg recorded. You could go see it on his channel. Find the link in the description. He also interviewed Glenn, but he didn't put the tape in right. The interview was never recorded, unfortunately.
how do you feel about like the whole thing? It's been overplayed about how Metallica has championed you. You know, lots of kids who never knew the Misfits or Samhain or.
Now, this is 1988 Glenn, who has just come off the road as tour support for Metallica with a record that's 2 months out. And remember, James, he did backing vocals on Danzig 1. He did backing vocals on Twist of Cain and Possession and maybe a couple other songs. So this might be a moment where they're very tight because they're, you know, throughout the years, there are times where Glenn's like, oh yeah, you know, when Metallica like butchers my songs, you know, and then there are other times where they're, you know, on stage, the big, what is it, Metallica 30 XXX show where Glenn comes on and sings Last Caress. So this is, let's see what he says here.
Now Danzig, you know, see them wearing the shirts and covering your songs, and like, how does that make you feel? You know, does it make you feel anything at all?
You know, I don't really care.
You don't care.
I mean, it's great. You know, those guys are great guys. You know, I'm friends with them. And they've always wanted to do, you know, those covers. And fuck, you know. And like I said before, I'd rather have somebody who's really into it cover them than just somebody who's trying to get over or something. You know, and the Misfits are like, you know, let's do a Misfit cover. Yeah.
Do you like the way they did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very political, Greg.
Nights in England, I got up and sang that with them. Which was kind of wild.
People went crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever thought about writing something specifically for them to do?
No.
Okay, you did it.
That's a shame because, well, what would a Glenn Danzig Metallica song sound like? Not Metallica covering the Misfits. Glenn Danzig writing a song for Metallica. This is not out of Glenn's wheelhouse. He wrote a song for Johnny Cash. He wrote a song for Roy Orbison. What's to say that he could not write a song for Metallica? You know, would it sound Black Sabbath-y? Would it sound in the same way that, you know, it's amazing how many songs were reconfigured from Children of the Grave by Black Sabbath. Again, not a musician, but I would love a musician to be like, Am I Demon, yada, 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 like just rattle off the songs that came from Children of the Grave. But I wonder what a Glenn Danzig written Metallica song would sound like. It'd be very interesting. And to think if he had written it for the Black Album, the amount of moolah that would have come in, because the Black Album is, well, the Black Album.
No, the Roy Orbison thing and also the Dave Vanian thing were just stuff I wrote specifically for them. Eventually, Dave didn't do that song. He went back with the Damned, and I just said, "Fuck, it's too good a song."
Right. He wrote a song for Dave Vanian, and that song was Archangel. Wait, yeah. Whoa, did we not? Hey, wait a minute. Did we totally miss out on the fact that Archangel was written for Dave Vanian to sing? When we were talking all that stuff, Kevin, when we were talking all that stuff before, we completely negated the fact that Archangel was written for Dave Vanian to sing. So of course it's not. How could it be Samhain in any way, shape, or form? Now, let's think about it. Could you imagine if the Damned covered Archangel? Is Archangel more of a Damned song? Could you imagine Archangel's a Damned song? Interesting, thought-provoking questions that we have to answer to ourselves.
How did the Roy Orbison thing, how did that whole thing come about?
Welcome, Neon.
Rick and I were always listening to Roy Orbison because I had always liked him. He was like, "Yeah, Roy Orbison." So I had told him how that guy's definitely with the right producers get like another good record in him somewhere. And eventually he got offered this Lesson Zero soundtrack, and he called me up one day and was like, "I'm thinking of using Roy Orbison for this Lesson Zero soundtrack I'm doing for this movie. He goes, you want to write a song for him?" I was like, "All right, yeah." And I wrote it in like 2 days, and it was basically like, a song tailored for Roy Orbison. And we did a demo, we sent it out to him, and he loved it.
Did you have to call it Less Than Zero?
So that's Life Fades Away. There's a Glenn Danzig version. There's a demo. I don't think that's ever surfaced. Has anybody ever heard that? I don't think that surfaced. Oh my God. Could you imagine if the Damned did Archangel for the Misfits Reunion show? That would have been the cheese on the I don't know. I couldn't think of a good analogy. Did the Damned open for the Misfits anywhere else besides Madison Square Garden? I think so. I think they did some LA shows too. Still, nothing compares to Madison Square Garden in October with the Damned opening at Madison Square Garden. Best Misfits show ever. Ever.
Yeah. Oh no, that's the other song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the Roy Orbison song called "Life
Like
Fades
it's
Away."
away.
Right.
Well, Leia told me what it's got to be about. So, like with the lyrics, at least Rick told me what it's supposed to be about, And then I just said,
That would have been the cheese.
Trendy thing.
No, I don't care. Because the album stands on its own. When you're buying out, you don't really play
The
much
cheese
of
on the
songs
cracker.
in the movie.
Did you see the movie?
No.
Good.
I
I
didn't
hate that
either.
movie. Stupid movie. Okay.
Was being a songwriter something that means a lot to you? Your songs just come out, or do you really take a lot of time on them?
I do. For every song that makes it to
I probably would have murdered somebody. I would have ripped somebody's head off if they had done that.
record, there's probably about 5 to 10.
Let me just take that back.
Being a songwriter something that means a lot to you? Your songs just come out, or do you really take a lot of time on them?
I do. For every song that makes it to a record, there's probably about 5 to 10 that get thrown out. At least with me. That's why I don't like a lot of other bands. I hate a lot of other bands because they just write a song and they say, "This is great."
So there is some serious merit to this idea that I don't think Glenn is exaggerating in the least. He's not speaking in any kind of hyperbole. I think the lost tracks of Danzig prove that in terms of how many times they record When Death Had No Name. But I think that goes all the way back to the Misfits. And I think we know that there were 25 Misfits songs at the beginning. I've listened to the lost Misfits songs, Infant Stranger, Lullaby, West End Avenue. I guess it's not Harpies in the Night. It's a song called Drive Me, and Feline Nursery. So we know that there are just tons and tons of songs that Glenn has just written, but have never made the recorded never made it to recording. But it really, when he says stuff like that, I think about bands like Samhain and Misfits, and I'm almost like, I think back to what Bobby Steele said to me about the trunk full of compositions, and Glenn picking the best ones for practice. Like that stuff melts my mind when I think about it as a Misfits fan. And I will never, ever, 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 as long as I live, forget the day when Manny played me that tape, and all of a sudden a song that I was like, when I heard West End Avenue, I was like, oh, this is West End Avenue. For sure it is. This is crazy. I can't believe I'm hearing this. But that song title had been around for 20 years. The internet had known about that song title for 20 years. So it wasn't that like, I mean, it was absolutely unreal, but it wasn't shocking in the same way that a song is playing and I go, Manny, what is that song? And he goes, oh, that's Infant Stranger. And I'm going, Infant Stranger? We don't know what Infant Stranger is. What's Infant Stranger? But that's not a Misfits song I ever heard of. And it's funny. I was looking at going back to the tapes. I promise I'll shut up 1 second. Going back to all the tapes I've been digitizing. Do you know what I forgot that I had asked Bobby about Barbie Bites the Dust? I asked him if Barbie Bites the Dust was a lost Misfits track, and it's not. It was bullshit. So if you've ever heard or wondered about Barbie Bites the Dust, it's not a Misfits song. It never was. It's not a lost Misfits track. It was just said off the cuff for an interview. Totally forgot about that until I saw the tape. I can't tell you. There's probably so much cool stuff on these tapes. I can't wait to listen to them.
No, and they don't screen their own stuff. They think just because they wrote it, it's great. They should write it, put it aside, and then in a couple of days play it again and see if they like it. If they don't like it that much anymore, then there's something wrong with it. But if it's still really intense and playing stuff, yeah, then it's great. It's good having a producer. That's why we want to have a producer, and that's why we went with Rick. We didn't have to use Rick. We could still be on Def Jam and not use Rick, but his ideas and my ideas, a lot of them mixed really well together. So.
You help a lot with
It's kind of like
Yeah.
a sounding board, like you were just saying. You write stuff, and sometimes you don't. A lot of people think it's a great song. How do you determine? Do you have?
Well, I do the whole thing, screening thing, and just bring down the good stuff that I still like after all that stuff. And then,
see, I hate that. I hate that he does that. He should. That's when Rick Rubin should be in the process. When he's screening the stuff, Rick Rubin should be there, helping him to screen the stuff. We know that Rick had to be integral in some way, shape, or form with the sound of Danzig or the shaping of Danzig, because look at Danzig before Rick Rubin is Samhain to a certain extent. And we know that's partially true on some level because, again, we were talking about Twist of Cain and we were talking about Possession and how they sound. Can you believe how seriously we talk about this stuff? This is such minutia.
we'd bring it down to a production rehearsal, and Rick would come down once in a while, and I'd sit back and listen, and maybe I'd get an idea, or he'd get an idea, what about trying this there? And if I really hated it, I said, no, you're crazy. Or if I thought it would go, I said, yeah, let's try it, see what happens. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
How much input do the other guys in the band have?
None.
I knew he was going to say that too. I mean, on their own arrangements and stuff, or no?
As far as
Nothing. It's all me. Me. Sorry, I've been really rough on Uncle Glenn lately tonight. I feel like I'm extra rough on Glenn. I'm sorry, Glenn. We love you.
Parts, Chuck will improvise a cut here or there, but a lot of it.
Come on, dude. Look, okay. We know Glenn is an accomplished freaking drummer. He is. Some of you may or may not realize this. This kind of blew my mind when I learned about it a few years ago. Glenn plays half the drums on November Coming Fire, right? That's not all. That's not London. London's only half. There's only half that friggin' album. The other half of the album is Glenn. I think that's Glenn on Mother of Mercy. I think that's Glenn on To Walk the Night. Glenn does know his way around a drum kit. However, Glenn is no Chuck Biscuits. And to think, I don't know, I give Chuck a little bit more credit there, Uncle Glenn.
It was like we were telling him, here, there, this needs this or that. You know, he would either come up with something really good, and if within a certain amount of time he didn't, we would tell him, you know, the drum part to play. And the same thing with John with his leads. I mean, some of the leads he pulled out of the hat, but other ones we sat there and said, you know, do this, or you hum the lead to him and stuff.
You write all your stuff on guitar, right?
And piano.
You hear that? He admitted to the humming thing, the thing where he hums the leads and whatever. Come on, give John more credit too, Glenn.
You ever consider doing? You're gonna laugh,
What?
but do you ever consider doing something acoustic?
No.
No.
We did. Me and John did an acoustic song in the studio, which Rick has, and he says it's great. I don't know, but it's
I wonder if that's "I'm the One," which would come out on Lucifuge.
like an old blues, like Seventh Son kind of song.
Yeah,
The lyrics are kind of like shit, now they turn it over.
Mine's still going.
Is yours still going?
Sure is.
oh my God. Do you know what I just heard? So you hear the flipping of a cassette tape and you hear Glenn ask if that thing is still going, which means that that there are two recorders going at the same time. I'll have to ask Greg about that next week. Someone remind me too. But it wasn't a lot of that November Coming Fire, a drum machine that Glenn programmed. You know, Neon, you might be. I want to say no, but you might be right. I don't want to stall us anymore. Can someone please volunteer to double check what Neon is saying? Or Neon, can you double check that? You might be right. I don't know. Might be wrong about that. I think it's definitely I'm the One, especially when he describes it. For sure, dude. It's I'm the One. Cool. This was some interview, huh?
All right, yeah, it's a typical old blues lyrics, like the woman witch telling the young boy he's like, you know, special. He's, you know, he's got
Yeah.
power or whatever.
I'm the one.
Like juju stuff. But it's like a typical like blues kind of, you know, Muddy Waters kind of that kind of thing, Robert Johnson kind of song. Wow.
Why won't you let?
Hey guys, if you have not already, can you please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, leave a like, any of these things, please support, please help. Two different takes.
Let him do anything with it.
I didn't say I wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
We did two different versions. We did one where it's kind of like that, and then we did another one where it's just kind of like almost like Fever. It was
Like Fever.
nightclub music, and it's still got the guitar stuff like Robert Johnson kind of stuff. And that's all it is. It's just guitar and vocals, and the one is bass guitar and vocals. That's it. I like it.
I like it too.
I haven't heard it in a long time.
Yeah. But you would never do it live. Never do
We
something.
might.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
I haven't heard it in a while though. I don't know what Rick's doing with any of that stuff. We have two other songs that aren't on the album.
It reminds me, I heard, I was wondering how much of the stuff had changed, you know, like before you actually record the album, because I had heard some stuff like a year before, like I heard a version of Am I Human, totally different lyrics.
No, the lyrics were always the same.
They were.
Yeah.
I love how Greg is basically admitting that he's like heard stuff like, and I wonder if Glenn is like how did you hear that? Hey, did someone give you a tape? How do you know about that? Like, because you know, Greg is has his pulse to the New York music scene. That's something I did not mention. I mentioned it in the previous episode. Greg is so tuned in to music and everything that's happening. That's why I'm so excited to talk to him next week. He's gonna, especially, I know Kevin will appreciate like all the goth post-punk stuff. Like Greg was there for all that in New York City. Like he's gonna have some really interesting insights on all that stuff. I think I heard it on the London Bay interview. That's a good interview with London on the Blaring Out show. You might be right, dude. I always thought that was Glenn on a kit. I could be super duper wrong. it would make sense that maybe it might not be Glenn on a kit, because look at his drumming less than 10 years earlier on Who Killed Marilyn. His drumming is atrocious. He could barely keep the beat. However, his drumming on Black Candy for Death Red is phenomenal. So he is an accomplished drummer. But when is he an accomplished drummer? Yes, Greg's channel is awesome. Even though I've never heard of most of the bands on it, that's what makes it cool. Yeah, lots of cool stuff to discover. Kevin, definitely check out Joe's band. That's Greg's band. Check out the Brain Eaters. All of you, check out the Brain Eaters. You will love that stuff. Joe is an awesome guy. When I drove down to interview Billy Rath from the Heartbreakers, it was Joe who was riding shotgun with me. Great guy, great musician.
Well, you didn't say like I'm not doing it. Or it sounded
Yeah, I did.
Oh, also, what's the there was a couple
This is
of
awkward.
that were like,
Could have been a rehearsal tape where I didn't have words yet.
Yeah.
We just done the song.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there was a song that started up when that
I bet you that's the 1987 rehearsal tape. That's somebody remember this, and if I forget. Kevin, Brain Eaters is on Greg's site. It's on Greg's channel. He's got a bunch of shows and demos, I think, of Brain Eaters stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the songs that didn't make it. That Elvis's drum.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
that was great.
Yeah, that one hasn't made it.
Do you ever want to collaborate with anybody? Or do you-
Ooh, interesting.
I mean, there isn't like somebody you have a burning desire to like write a song with or anything like that.
No.
Like, no. Okay.
No.
Some people do.
Nobody living.
No. I thought maybe, I don't know where you were.
No.
Do you have a preference between like performing and writing and touring? And,
What do you mean?
like, does anyone appeal to you more? Like, do you prefer working in the studio as opposed to performing live, or do you prefer?
I like it all.
Like it all?
I like it all. I mean, there's obviously times you don't want to be in the studio when you're doing an album. You're like there almost every day. It's like, oh, I'm not going to the studio again. And it's the same thing with live. You do some great shit.
All right, so this is pretty interesting, guys. So look, Mrs. Central says Glenn, he was on drums. Diablos is not easy drumming. Okay. Diablos is not easy drumming, I don't think. Birthright, Let the Day Begin, and Pony Girl. Okay, so I was actually wrong. London is on all those other tracks. Good for London. How about that? But only one is a drum machine.
What do you mean?
Like, does anyone appeal to you more? Like, do you prefer working
I
in the
took it
studio
back.
as opposed to performing live, or do you prefer?
I like it all.
Like it all?
I like it all. I mean, there's obviously times you don't want to be in the studio when you're doing an album. You're like there almost every day. It's like, oh, I'm not going to the studio again. And it's the same thing with live. You do some great shows, and just the grind starts getting to you. And just
All my favorite tracks.
Yeah.
Play. And sometimes before you got to play, you got to do interviews, or you got to go to a college radio station.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it. You want to sleep.
Yeah. I can relate to that. In light of the MTV situation, are you doing any promo with MTV? I mean, are they having you do any little walk-ons or
No,
none of that?
I don't want
You don't want to?
to. No,
Were you-
they play every, dicks.
Yeah.
Right, so the video was already banned at this point.
We'll change that.
I think what happens is they got, because they're now being watched by so many people, it's a lot different than it used to be. And so they're under closer scrutiny from groups like PMRC or all these people and Christian.
PMRC.
All the big phones.
Yeah, right. Really. There was some weird question that we both are like dying to know about.
Oh, yeah.
God. Are you aware of this whole Doyle thing?
Yeah. Picking the bones.
Wait, what's the whole Doyle thing? Picking the bones? What? What? All right, let's take this back.
Really. There was some weird question that we both are like dying to know about.
Oh, yeah.
God. Are you aware of this whole Doyle thing?
Picking the bones. That's what it is. Basically, they, you know, who needs to even talk about it? It's silly. I mean, basically, it's like since whatever I've been doing has been getting some notoriety, and I've been pushing the old Misfit records and the Samhain records, and now the new stuff, they're just thinking that now they're going to scam on something. You know what I mean? I mean, they never really had any input in the band. As far as any input at all, Samhain members and now Danzig members have much more input than these guys ever had. I mean, I just come down to rehearsal and go, this is the song, play it. But, you know, and it wasn't any real versatile stuff. It was just like, Doyle was not a really good guitar player. I mean, I did play guitar on a lot of those records, especially the Walk Among Us record.
Well, we knew that.
Also.
Wow, he admits it though. He admits it right. Oh no.
Both are like dying to know about.
So he really admits it though. I mean, he never really talks about that.
Silly. I mean, basically, and now Danzig members have much more input than
So in 1988, he is just so diminishing Doyle and Jerry in every possible sense that he can, in every which way that he can.
These guys ever had. I mean, I just come down to rehearsal and go, this is the song, play it. But, you know, and it wasn't any.
And those guys will argue that it was always a chorus and a verse, and that they would flesh out the rest of the song. And that's why they felt they were so entitled to songwriting credits.
Real versatile stuff was just like, Doyle was not a really good guitar player. I mean, I did play guitar on a lot of those records, especially the Walk Among Us record.
He's never admitted that. Even, oh God, I've never heard him admit that in an interview, I don't think. That's not true. Ultimate Guitar Magazine, he did mention that he did that. He did mention that's not true. I'm wrong. But he's just so cavalier about it. Huh.
And prior also.
But what's he talking about? They said bones. What did they mean? I got to ask Greg about this. I got to ask Greg about a lot of stuff.
Have you seen like the big ads? The extent they've gone to with big full color.
They're very rich.
You know, so you can say like, buy the new Misfits
Misfits,
album.
yeah.
So it's like,
Well, because that's their only claim to fame. It's been 6 or 7 years since the Misfits.
Oh, 6 or 7 years. Oh my God. How dare they? 6 or 7 years? Come on, Glenn. We know how accomplished you are. You've already done everything that you did in Samhain, and now you're doing Danzig. Think about that. From Misfits to Danzig in like 5 years. That's crazy. Like 5 years was like 2016. You know, that's crazy, man. From 2021, I should say. Wow. I cannot wait to talk to Greg about all this stuff. Hold on. Okay, wait, hold on. Let's rewind here. Sorry. Joe says that they're likely referring to the Doyle fan club at the time. Right, Joe, that's right, because, well, the timeline for that is 87 to 88. They're kind of building the guitars. 88 to 89, they're recording the album, something like that. Christ the Conqueror was really only around for a couple of years. I know that they were technically Christ the Conqueror all the way up until 94, but I mean, the actual recording of the album was in that small window of time. But the lawsuit, maybe the lawsuit had just started. When was the beginning of the lawsuit? It had to have been in 88 or 89. Mr. Central, when London May joined the band, he didn't have time to learn. He didn't have time to learn all the songs before recording began. So GD played drums on several songs. Evie played drums on several songs during the rehearsals for the LP. Yes, that and London has been very forthcoming about that, and I don't think that's like a neg on his ability in any which way. They were not easy songs to learn either. You know, that drumming stuff that Samhain drumming is not easy. It's a testament to both Steve and to London that they can do that kind of stuff. Yeah, Doyle fan club just prior to the Christ. So what they're doing is they're right. So they started the Doyle fan club, and what they're doing is they're like, Glenn, what's the scuttlebutt with the Doyle fan club? You know, so they haven't even done Christ the Conqueror, right? So it was October of 1988, which means they must have been literally recording the album. Can anybody find that out? When were they recording the Christ the Conqueror album? I bet you it was that summer or right then in that time. Picking the bones like vultures, right? Makes sense. Metaphor, gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. Listen, when I don't know something, I ask questions. That's just how I like to be, or I try to be, at least. Thank you, guys.
Gone.
We also got the team mailing list, the Free Club, because when I first last year, I got a postcard advertising it, and it was the only reason they had my address.
Well, it was the old Team Club addresses.
Right. So that's why Greg isn't even asking about it, because as we said at the very beginning, if you're just tuning in or if you missed the show, Greg was a member of the Fiend Club, and so he got a postcard. They had all the lists, Jerry and Doyle, as they were trying to jumpstart things, calling it the Doyle Fan Club, and so he got that postcard, and now he's asking Glenn if he knows anything about it. Got it.
It was the first wave of them, and they put them on their desk computer file.
By the way, I've decided that I'm going to show you guys something at the end of this episode. We're almost done here. If I could shut my mouth, 10 more minutes of interview and we're done. And I have a special surprise for anybody who makes it to the end.
And then after that, they didn't get any more. I had left and still have this mailing list, because Samhain did extensive mailing lists. So basically, we have about, I'd say, probably 2,000 or 3,000 names. And of those,
2,000 or 3,000 names.
If that, because a lot of people going on to get married or extensive mailing lists.
The only reason they had my address.
2,000 or 3,000 names in 1988 for a independent DIY punk band. Think about that. Let's just do some math here. Let's say that if you have 2,000 or 3,000 people on your mailing list, let's say that they're buying a T-shirt or an LP for $5, and let's just say that every single one of them buys a T-shirt or an LP of some kind. 3,000 times 5, that's $15,000. $15,000, and that's just one product. Okay, you think about all the merch, all the line of stuff that they had, all the shirts. You know, it's just kind of crazy to me. It's so crazy. It's like, who needs a record label? Where would Glenn be today had he never signed with a record label? That's an interesting prospect. I mean, would he have, I don't know, actually, maybe he wouldn't really be. Maybe he'd still be doing Samhain. I don't know. Christ the Conqueror was 89. Hit those numbers against what he claims of pressing info. Good point, Joe. Very good point. Well, he exaggerates that in the Pusshead interview. He's like, 3 hits from Mel, 15,000 copies. Bullet, Welk Among Us, 50,000 copies. Dissemination of information.
Well, it was the old Team Club addresses. It was the first wave of them, and they put them on their desk computer file. And then after that, they didn't get any more. After I had left and still had this mailing list, because Samhain did extensive mailing lists. So basically, we have about, I'd say, probably 2,000 or 3,000 names, and of those names.
I'm sorry, I keep pausing this. That's why the philosophy that has always aroused me in as an artist is this piece of information. If you are someone who has 1,000 followers that are willing to spend $100 a year on what you do artistically, think about what I just said. If you have 1,000 fans, minimum 1,000 fans that will spend $100. What's 100 divided by 12? What's 100 divided by 12? It's less than $10, right? 100 divided by 12 is $8.30 a month. If you can get 1,000 people to spend a minimum of $8.30 enough, and you can create enough content, then you are an independent artist that's making over $100,000 a year. I know that's super simple. That's like a super simple, whimsical, dreamy sort of concept, but the concept is sound. Maybe the particulars are not, but the concept is sound. That's the type of stuff that blows my mind. And if you're a guy or a girl, whoever, if you have the ability to do that and like set up that infrastructure, you never need to work a day job ever again.
Probably only about 1,000 or anything, if that. Because a lot of people going on to get married or whatever. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah, get married.
Out was from like 81, 82.
I mean, are you thinking of doing anything to stop them from?
Well, I don't really care. I don't care about the Misfit name that much. I would hate to see them drag it through the mud.
Wow. Oh boy. Wow. These are some words, man. These are some words, man. I don't really care. I don't really care about the Misfits name. I'd hate to see them drag it through the mud. And that's kind of like a little bit of what would eventually occur, at least in the very minimum. Again, taking the music out of it. Because I like the music. I don't mind American Psycho. I don't mind Famous Monsters. Half of Famous Monsters. Half American Psycho. Taking the music out of it, and you just think about what happened. Brandon. I love Brandon. Every time Brandon comes on the show, he always asks me, where's Michael Graves? You know where Michael Graves is? He's in my back pocket right now. It's just kind of funny how this is everything that Glenn was afraid of would kind of come to pass, and he'd have to fight them for it in court, and he would lose. Where is Michael Graves? You know where Michael Graves is? Michael Graves is probably stranded in Washington, D.C. right now.
So in that aspect, that's something. But
How would you feel if they like this? I had heard rumors that they were trying to get somebody to put, towards and so they could towards the Misfits and rehash in my head. I mean, how would you feel if they did that?
well, like I just said, I hate to see them drag the names in the mud. But
He's so nonchalant about it, dude. He's so like whatever. He's so whatever about it. I guess because he's like super stoked. He's like, everything's rocketing. He's taking off. His Danzig is taking off. He's opening everything we just said. And it's just kind of like whatever. But maybe he also doesn't think that it's possible. Maybe he doesn't think that Jerry and Doyle can get it together to do it. I mean, if he was the main brains in the band, well, judging by Christ the Conqueror, Glenn was spot on. Exactly, dude. Exactly. Well said, Joe. Oh, fuck.
also, I mean, I think a lot of people realize that I wrote all the songs, and I don't know. They would just ruin the songs. I mean, that was one of the reasons the band stopped to begin with. I mean, I just couldn't stand going and doing the live thing. It wasn't even like, somebody explained it really well to me. They said the last year of the Misfits, it was like watching an industrial band do the Misfit songs.
It was like watching an industrial band doing the Misfit songs. So you have to imagine how mad Glenn must have gotten. Because you want to know something? You can say, oh, Glenn was out of sight, out of mind, but you have to wonder, watching, that he must have been maybe watching from a distance, even as like he's soaring on clouds higher than he could possibly imagine, just accumulating so much success and wealth in the 90s and whatnot. But you have to think somewhere in the back of his mind, because the Misfits came back a year after Glenn was at his peak. Glenn peaked in 94 with Mother being in the top 40. If we're talking about critical commercial success, 94, right? So, and then by 95, Glenn's actually, something happens to Glenn's voice, which I'd like to do an episode on. What happened to Glenn's voice? That's a mystery. Well, it's a little bit of mystery to me. Not really. A little bit of it is a mystery. But he blew out his voice. And then all of a sudden, he's doing an industrial album, kind of. He's doing Danzig 555 and Danzig 666 and yada, yada, yada. While the Misfits are out there doing their thing and being on, MTV and yada, 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 and touring with, like Anthrax and, just all over the place, going to South America. I mean, and that's maybe also why the Misfits band is at an all-time high at that time, in terms of conversation in interviews. Also, by 88, Guns nor Metallica had yet to give the Misfits name their pedigree as well. Well, wait a minute. So Joe is the resident Metallica guy. Joe, I have 2 questions for you. I'd love to hear the answers to these. Question 1. Earlier, Greg and Lorena asked Glenn if he'd like to collaborate with anybody, if he ever thought about collaborating with Metallica, and made me wonder what a Danzig written Metallica song would sound like. Would that work? How would that work? That's number 1. Number 2, when did the covers come out? The covers EP, or when did those covers come out? What album was Metallica about to do, or what did they just come off of? Is it in between Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, in between the Black Album and Ride the Lightning? Like, please give me some context as someone who is not versed in Metallica in any way, shape, or form, and go, if you would.
Because it was just like amps, super loud. You couldn't tell what was what, and just like kind of like a vocal somewhere in there. Yeah.
It's amazing that he went on with the Misfits for as long as he did, feeling the way that he must have felt for probably close to 3 years, and really that, like, the death kiss of the Misfits, Sean Garrison in his Little Fiend series says that it really happened with Static Age never being released as an album. But I think the death kiss really begins with the very thing that would, allow them to sort of go on and tour and get involved in hardcore, was sacking Bobby Steele and getting Doyle in the band. That was the beginning. They had enough musicianship where they didn't sound like the way Glenn is talking about. That really is a result of bringing Doyle into the band, and Doyle and Jerry then customizing their gear and just turning it into crap, that sort of thing. But interesting to hear him. And, again, the context of where Glenn is when he's talking about these songs, or when he's talking in this interview, there's no cameras rolling. This is not airing on MTV. It's for a magazine. He's in a casual, relaxed environment. He must be speaking with some sort of semblance of truth here in regards to this stuff, because it is slightly different than what we've heard before. I don't know.
There you go.
Do you write anything besides songs?
Yeah, I do a lot of soundtrack stuff at home.
Yeah.
Like horror soundtrack kind of stuff. I listen to a lot of Wagner.
Do you write anything along the lines of, books or films?
Interesting. So he does. So could you imagine the plethora of, like, horror soundtrack music that Glenn must have composed that's not like Black Aria or whatever? Like, it sounds like he must have a bunch of stuff. The Danzig vault must be vast and deep. I would imagine. All right, so we have some answers here. Neon Knee says Garage Days came out in 1987. Neon, aren't you in New Zealand right now? What time is it over in New Zealand? Covers August 87. Thank you. Metallica wanted to cover Green Hell in '85 with Cliff during the recording of Master of Puppets, but did not release it. So I wonder if that was because they didn't have the lyrics yet to Green Hell. I'm wrong. Garage Days between Puppets and Justice, first release post Cliff death. Huh. Came out in August of '87. So Cliff is not even on the Misfits covers. How about that? And then again, how big was Metallica EP? How big was Metallica EP's reach then? I think you're asking the wrong question. It's not how big is the EP's reach. How big is the reach of Puppets and Justice? And the EP's reach is going to be predicated on the reach of those albums and how powerful they are. You know, I would imagine, at least. By the way, I don't know if you remember when we were in Ulm, Germany, we went to that incredible record store. It was like the third to last show with Blitzkid. And they had so many Metallica live shows and bootlegs on vinyl upstairs. They had all those soundtracks. That's where I found that first pressing of Danzig, the European UK pressing of Danzig. 22 euros I spent on that, people. It's worth a lot more. Now, Gun's Spaghetti Incident doesn't come out till 92, 93. Huh. 7 p.m. in New Zealand right now, people. But that's like, are you like coming from the future, or like you're in the future right now, Neon? I think Metallica and Mustaine were both wearing Misfits Samhain shirts in magazines throughout '86 and '87. So the exposure of the imagery. Wow, this is so interesting. I've never put this timeline together. You know, it's amazing how like you hear something like the story, but you never plug it into dates, and it changes. It changes everything. Metallica and Mustaine were both wearing, so '86 to '87. The EP hadn't come out yet, so people they're seeing the imagery, and then the songs come out, or perhaps they're also playing them live in '86 and '87. I would imagine. I had friends who were huge Metallica fans who bought it the day it came out. Okay, there you go. And yes, it is Thursday. So Neon is actually in the future, guys. It's Thursday, 7 p.m. where he is, and it's almost 1 o'clock where I'm at. I'm so sorry. We got 10 minutes left. We can get through this, you guys. We got to get through this. I'm not doing a part 2 on the same interview. We got to do it. Last Caress in Green Hell was pre-Justice. Interesting.
That stuff, I have a lot of rough drafts for some books and a lot of other stuff like that, and some screenplays and stuff.
Rough drafts for books.
Right now, I really don't have the time to devote totally to that. I would have to take off 3 months, just doing nothing but that, like not answering the phone or anything. Just kind of really getting into it. Because I want it to be really good.
Yeah. Do you think you ever would pursue it? Yeah. That's cool. Because that's what I was also going to answer.
Who's tapping?
There comes a day for everybody. Like, if you ever moved on from this, what would you foresee yourself doing? Stuff like that.
Yeah, direct. I'd like to direct movies, maybe write screenplays.
Wow. So there you go. Those ambitions to direct a movie all the way back in 1988, and even further back, because we know he wanted to put out cassette tapes. He wanted to put out VHS cassettes of original horror stories. That's how Glenn would put it. So Glenn had movie-making aspirations that totally started at the beginning of Danzig, but would not get realized until the masterpiece that is Verotika. with eyeball titties. Okay, so what we're doing for the scene, okay. Now, you can see through your titties, okay? Because they got eyeballs on them. And there's a giant, naked, albino Spider-Man. But he's not like Spider-Man. He's literally a Spider-Man. Like, you got to put a little hyphen between the two. Oh, and anyone who doesn't accredit the Misfits fame to Metallica wearing their shirts is just wrong. Pusshead being the real hero. Fun fact, James Hetfield said November Coming Fire was one of his... Yeah, I believe that. Of course. That type, yes, yes. I think it's Glenn probably wanting the interview to be over or like anxious to end the interview. They've been going for 40 minutes now. So who knows? Verotik was so cringe. Dude needs an editor. I've spoken at great length about Verotika. You should check out that episode, Kevin. I actually tried to do a commentary track to Verotika, and I couldn't do it. I tried to do it, and I literally couldn't do it. I actually ended one of the few times. I've been doing this for almost a year. Can you believe it's been almost a year of shows? It was, I just, yeah. Oh, you watched it. Okay. So you, yes, I commend you. You're all caught up. I commend you. I appreciate and I respect that. I'm the same way with when I listen to Smodcast, that's Kevin Smith's show. I just go in order, man. And I'll be like months backlogged and I'll just go through those episodes. I gotta tell you, there's nothing like having a show that's like hours and hours in length just to like put on in the background when you're just doing whatever it is you're doing. It's a good feeling. It's fun. What were we just talking about with Verotika? Oh, that he wants to direct. Yeah.
Soundtracks, do some horror movie soundtracks. And that's it. I don't think I'll ever move away from this. Like totally.
10 months.
And then back.
Yeah.
I mean, remember one thing about Verotika. One thing, this is the only thing I'll say. Glenn Danzig has taste in art that he likes. And we know this because of how much he loves comics. We heard that whole thing about the comics, right? But then there's ability. It's like, imagine having a concerto in your head, but you don't know how to play guitar, kind of like me. I write songs in my head all the friggin' time. I try to sing songs all the friggin' time. I can hear it fine in my head, but singing it or playing it, totally different thing. My ability and my taste or my vision don't line up. And that is the flaw. That's why Verotika is Verotika. Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. Thank you. Don't you threaten me. Don't you threaten me. Because I will. At least he didn't pursue his passion for wrestling. Oh my God. Well, we do know that Jerry. Now, do you think Glenn, who's an avid wrestling fan, do you think that he watched the Misfits wrestle in WCW? And do you think that he got a kick out of it, like privately in his own moments? Or was he just like, these idiots, what are they freaking doing? God damn it. Why are they even on there? As the Misfits, no less. You know? I don't know.
Have you ever been asked? You probably will be to do something in a movie. Yeah. Want to tell us? No.
It was stupid stuff. It was just typical, stuff I just wasn't really interested in.
Yeah.
Unless it's like exactly what I want to do.
Do you have a goal? Like you were saying before, how you're family, you said, well, we want this by this time, whatever. For this band, seeing that this is like, your avenues are much more open with this band. With this band here, do you have any kind of long-term plan for it?
Yeah, we want to just be really successful at what we do and put out like great albums.
Which he would.
So live forever. That, let's say 10 or 20 years from now, some kid will walk in and go,
You know what's a testament to Glenn Danzig? I know I've ripped a lot on Glenn tonight, but here's a testament to him. He said that in 1988, and you can find interviews with him 30 years later saying the exact same thing. He had that vision. He went out and gosh darn it, he did it. He did it. And people are still listening to those albums 30 years later and his other music even longer. So it's just kind of like it's kind of amazing, Yeah, Kevin, you're right. Kevin asked, didn't Glenn direct some music videos in between? He sure friggin' did. He did Crawling Across Your Killing Floor, I think. Did a couple of videos, and I think he did some of the early videos too. And I think that's probably what gave Glenn the confidence and the wind beneath his sails, along with seeing his chum, Rob Zombie, make a name for himself. Because I'm sure in Glenn's head, his wheels are spinning when he sees Rob Zombie do House of a Thousand Corpses And you know that somewhere deep down inside that Glenn Danzig loves House of a Thousand Corpses. No, it's not that he loves it. I bet Glenn is like, damn it, I wish I made that. Like, that's the movie that Glenn wants to make. Glenn wants to do like House of a Thousand Corpses. You know what I'm saying? Something along those lines, or at least he did. You know, this is the guy who's now writing songs called like Skull Forest and Kiss the Skull and Black Hell. And, you know, just like very derivative song titles at this point. I don't know. I bet Glenn enjoyed the F out of watching Jerry and Co. getting choke slammed on his favorite Monday night programming for a month. Yeah, Joe, you're probably right. You're probably right. Verotik would have been a better series of music video than you know, Kevin, you actually are really onto something there. I think you're right, dude. I absolutely think you're right. Verotika should have just been music videos. In a way, they kind of are. In a way, he directed them like they were music videos. And in his mind, they made sense in music video logic. And that's another reason why we got what we got. And I'm very curious to see, what is it? Death Rider in the House of Vampires. First of all, I think that is the coolest freaking title ever. Death Rider in the House of Vampires. And this concept of a spaghetti western where everybody's a vampire is genius. I don't care how bad it's going to be. It's genius. I can't wait. I'm so stoked. One of my most anticipated releases, and not just because I'm a giant Danzig nerd.
Of course, the band is probably gone or whatever has happened to them. But
6 minutes.
What was in the press release that came with the promo CD? They said something like, they listed the previous bands and it said something like Palace.
I have no idea.
I was like,
That was probably
I was like, what the hell is Palace?
what happened was I had made the mistake of telling
Oh my God. You guys. Talus. We're about to hear the origin of Talus. Are you serious? We know about Kudat and Boojang real quick. You always hear about this from Misfit Central. There's Talus and there's Kudat and Boojang, right? Kudat and Boojang had Mr. Jim on drums and had Stevie Linder, I believe, on guitar. And Glenn had always had some pre-Misfit bands. We know about Pony, which is Prostitutes in New York. That had Manny, and this guy Tony, who was on bass, who I interviewed. I interviewed the bassist of Pony, Prostitutes in New York, and I just dug up that interview, and I can't wait to review it. In any case, but the other one that no one knows nothing about is Talus. But they friggin' asking about Talus, and they're asking him in 1988. This is blowing my mind. This is some crazy stuff. Hold on, I got to rewind that real quick. Let's listen to that again.
What was in the press release that came with the promo CD? They said something like, they listed the previous bands and it said something like Palace.
Wow.
I have no idea.
I was like,
That was probably
I was like, what the hell is Palace?
what happened was I had made the mistake of telling somebody the first band that I was ever in when I was a little kid was a band that was half original and half Black Sabbath covers. And it was a band called Talus because there's a band now. They made a big deal.
That is so crazy. So that's when he's referring to the band, or at least one of the bands that's half covers, half originals, which he says all the time in interviews. But he's specifically talking about Talus and acknowledging Talus. Greg, you friggin' genius for unearthing this tape and digitizing it. This is blowing my mind right now.
I don't know. There's two different press things. Do you have both the press things?
There's two different press things.
Okay, yeah. It's just like ridiculous. And it was like I heard about it. They said that the Misfits broke up in 1986 or 81 or something silly,
That's so funny. Like, oh my God, I would love to read this early press release thing. Now, how did they know about Talus unless, here's the thing. Okay, here's what doesn't make any sense to me, though. One thing that doesn't make any sense. This is what we do. We're detectives. We try to apply logic and deduct things to make it fit whatever narrative we're trying to, think up or whatever. So how on earth would someone who's writing PR for a label know about something as obscure as Talus unless Glenn told them about the band himself in some, some sort of detail. And now Glenn is trying to like sort of play it off like, I don't know where they got that from. That is interesting.
It's just like, or whatever, I don't know. Or the Misfits formed anyone or something. It was just like, some half.
Wow.
All the time, though.
Yeah. No, the one that Rick and his, and Rick Manello, that one's great. I didn't really write it. I sat there laughing.
Wow. Now I want to read the other press release. Those press releases in Scream With Me, that book, are phenomenal. I had never read those. The one with there's one for Glenn and there's one for Jerry. They're really, really spectacular. If you have the book, or if you're thinking about getting the book, definitely check out those pages because they're just really fun. I didn't even know those existed. Those were from Umberto's collection, I believe. Holy crap! Did we just hit 3 hours? My lord!
What about this? And I go, funny. It was just like Rick Rubin. I don't know if you know Rick and Manello are just like the two most crazy guys, and they're sitting there going, "Oh, this will be great," and then they just like came up with all this great. Geffen hated it. It's like we would never send out a bio like this, and they're going, "Good."
So is Geffen? Here's what I'm trying to figure out: was Geffen the distributor for Def Jam, for the Def Jam label, or is Def Jam sort of like a subsidiary or like an imprint on Geffen? What is Geffen's relation to Def Jam, or what is Rick Rubin's relation to Geffen?
They wanted like Glenn in his part time paints and
Right.
They wanted something like that.
Wow.
God. Who else is on? Is there anybody else? Or who else is on this label? Because isn't it
Def American?
Yeah, isn't it relatively
Slayer.
new?
Okay, so Def American is through Geffen.
Over us, a band, Wolfsbane from England, Masters of Reality, and a few other bands that I don't know if it's recorded or not, but I don't know if they're signed either, so I don't know if I should say their name.
Is there anything we didn't ask you that you want to be asked?
I don't know. I don't remember that far back.
Oh my God.
Do you think you might ever release Return of the Fly?
Yeah, that's gonna come out on a British CD for Legacy.
A British version of Legacy of Brutality is going to have Return to the Fly at least according to Glenn in 1988. So Glenn has Glenn given the all of the masters to Caroline yet? I think Glenn, when did Glenn give the I have to check. I know because it's in this tapes. Because you know what's funny? Tom Begowitz, the guy who did the Misfits box set, I thought his interview was 2 tapes. His interview was 3 tapes long. We did a 3-tape interview. It must be at least 2.5 hours with that dude. I'm sure he says the year in that thing. I don't know when he officially turned over all the masters, though. It must have been it might have been as late as 93 or 94. So that means at this time, Glenn is like still doing Plan 9. He's in full control of Plan 9, and he's got distribution through Caroline, I guess. I'm not sure Glenn feels G's on TCM offhand. What does that mean? On TCM offhand? But bet your ass he knows house. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But bet your ass he knows House of 1,000 is just Rob Zombie writing a love letter to Joe. Yes, of course. Then again, Glenn used Caroline Williams from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 in Verotika. Yeah, but so he probably dug Texas Chainsaw Massacre and in turn either hated or envied House of 1,000 Corpses. All right. So Joe's actually taking it a step back to Rob Zombie's probably shared mutual affection for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which, I mean, that dude just like literally like over churned out this thing that's so similar. And, his work is, I don't know, I think Rob Zombie's kind of a hack. in as a filmmaker. I don't think, you know, I'm going to say something really controversial. I actually like his Halloween movies. I think they're great. I think he did a good job with them. It's probably because the original Halloween is not a sacred cow for me. My favorite original Halloween film is actually H2O, if you can believe it. So kill me if you want. What can I say? I was a Scream guy. I was a Scream kid. Sidney Prescott is my Laurie Strode. Okay? That's the truth.
Yeah.
3 minutes left.
I know one other thing I was curious about. Some people, when you play them the record, I was curious like how you like, you know, you refuse that, or like, you know, they hear a lot more Doors influence than like the previous record. Now that's what some people, not like, you know, not let's say us, but like, you play to somebody who's never heard you before in the band, and they sound kind of like the Doors. Is that like, you know, does that have any basis? Or?
I don't know if it has that much basis. Well, in Spin, they thought it sounded like Elvis.
Well, it does. You always sound like Elvis.
Well, so that's what I mean. It's like my three favorite singers are like Jim Morrison, Elvis Presley mainly.
Oh,
Right?
so he admits that he likes Jim Morrison in that interview. There you go. Because if you go back to the very first episode 10 months ago, we dive in heavy on analyzing the overwhelming influence of Jim Morrison and the Doors on the original 3-piece of the Misfits without any guitar. Like, it's insane how much the Misfits were in many songs almost trying to sound like the Doors, trying to be more like a Doors art rocky band than they were a punk band. I mean, really don't feel the punk. I mean, that's not true. They don't feel like the Damned or the Ramones until that guitar gets added anyway. So I don't know. The work print of Rob Zombie's Halloween is fantastic. I've never seen the work print. Way better than the theatrical version. Not sure they ever released it, but you can download it. It's out there. I didn't know that there was a work print running around. I'll have to check that out. How lucky are we that we have the Return of the Living Dead work print out there too? I mean, God, thank God for work prints. There's also a Night of the Living Dead remake from 1990. There's a work print out there of that as well.
Great song.
Yeah.
And so any of those references, I mean, you know, because I always thought that Jim Morrison ripped off Elvis left and right.
Huh.
Because all of a sudden it's just like Elvis, and there's nobody like that, and all of a sudden there's this guy.
You know, I got to tell you, I never thought about that. The idea of Jim Morrison kind of ripping off Elvis in a weird kind of way. If Elvis is a crooner, so is Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison croons kind of like Elvis. Wow.
By Jim Morrison, and he's got a bass voice like Elvis.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It's more like
You're right.
smooth and full, you know, as opposed to all those like pop voices which just kind of carry a song.
Wow.
They ride in that range that's memorable or whatever. And then same with Bill Medley, you know. So I don't think Bill Medley really sounds like Elvis that much though, but I think that Jim Morrison really sounds like him a lot. The difference is that Jim Morrison is saying words that mean a little more than what Elvis says. You know,
Wow. What a great breakdown.
The connection where Elvis would always do Righteous Brothers songs in his Vegas set. So this kind of it's kind of a connection there. I try it. And those are my favorite singers. So if anyone makes a connection there, that's fine.
I think it might be just because there's not many people in rock
I can sing.
Yeah.
No, it's
Who
true.
sing with a low voice and yet sing very like powerfully and melodically at the same time. It's not that many people.
Well, because
Yeah.
every heavy metal band, don't forget their main influence is Dio. Ethel Merman. That's like Ethel Merman. Sounds like Ethel Merman. So
That is the edge that he has over other metal bands, in the sense that he really is, even in his metalness, he's coming from a place of he's coming from this Elvis sort of Jim Morrison-y place and like blues based place. It's very interesting.
Sit in the car and do, no, you know, then do any metal song after that.
Really?
Same fucking thing. I hate it.
Although now the big catchphrase, we make fun of this all the time. When we interview these guys and they all say, We're really like getting into a bluesier thing, and they're about as bluesy as
Yeah,
like, you know.
I hate people
get
that,
the hell out of
that jump on the blues bandwagon because it's just like really pisses me off.
Oh, the tape switched.
I wanted to get them to stop that anyway, somebody else.
This is the end of the tape, people. We did it. We did all 48 minutes in 3 hours.
I think I met him.
Unless he's changed.
Thick glasses.
Yeah, well,
Ray-Ban for
yeah, that's exactly. That's exactly.
Anyway, I see you goes, yeah, I'm gonna you can ask a stupid question. Just Rolling Stone.
No, not
He goes,
David.
well, I don't know.
Can you guys hear that?
It's just-
It's only in one eardrum now.
Look, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
It
a
was
lot.
nice to meet you.
It was great.
Please, like, you'll all let us know where he's at and stuff, right? When he's playing.
Oh yeah. Anytime you guys.
That's nice. Put him on the
Okay,
list.
Glenn.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Glenn. Bye. Bye, guys. Wow, they must have been on cloud nine.
Thanks.
So cool. And that's it. That's the end of the interview. Wow. You know, that was pretty freaking cool, you guys. That was long. I can't believe it's 3 hours and 10 minutes later, and you got 15 of you are still here. I salute all of you for sticking with me. I was not intending to do more than I can't believe we did more than 3 hours. That's crazy. Oh, look at that. Jason Trioxin favored the 90s Night of Living Dead to the original. You know, I got to tell you, if Jason Trioxin and I did not end on such a bad note and Jason was still alive today, I would love to debate him. Not debate him, but I would love to talk to him about why. There are many things that are wonderful about Night of the Living Dead 1990. I love Night of the Living Dead 1990. I think it's one of the finest remakes out there. I love the way the ending is changed. I mean, again, it's also written by George Romero, right? So, and it's directed by Tom Savini. So it's like it's being remaked by the same people, you know, the same sort of element. It's, I don't know. I that's fine. I'm cool. I can understand that. Hey, thank you, Steve. Yes, someday we'll all be at a Danzig show or a Misfits show, and we'll all be hanging out and woeing together. Listen, if you guys hung around, I'm going to show you something. It's not a big something. It's just, I just want to show you some of the work that I've been doing here. Hold on. Just so you can see. You know, I've been posting a lot on the Facebook page. If you don't follow the Lodi Facebook page, please go check it out. They came from Lodi. And if you haven't already, please like, share, subscribe this channel and this page. Here's what I'm going to show you. All right. So I did this last week, and I'll show you how much progress I've made. Hold on. I'm going to share this page. Ready? And there she is. So this is how much I've done since we last spoke. We got Manny. This is Manny. Wait, let me see if I can. You're not going to be able to hear this, I don't think. I doubt it. I don't know what you're going to. When. So there's Manny. This is the Manny interview I did. It's about an hour. Look at all these tapes, guys. All digitized. All digitized. There's a lot of work. And that's just the digitizing part, you people. Do you understand this? Here's one that you might enjoy. Now, if I could just friggin' find it. There's the recently departed Joey image. I just digitized him today. He exists still here on this tape. I got to tell you, unfortunately, Joey was not sober. Oh, look, there's me walking around. Look, there I am trying to mic up Joey image. We're in his house. This was his house down in Florida. And yeah, Joey, look at him. What a mug. He was not so right in the head when I met him. Not, at least not as much. This is going to be a very interesting interview. You guys might think like, who is this guy? What's the big deal? This guy, I am so stoked about this guy right here. This is a guy from Glenn's pre-Misfit band. Okay, right here. This guy told me the whole story. He remembers everything. He remembers everything. And he went on and he told me just so much stuff that I was like, wow, I have the beginning of the film. Between him and Manny, I have what I'm hoping is truly the beginning of the film. You might recognize this gentleman. Michael Graves was not the only person who was interviewed for this documentary. Right here we have Mr. Mike Hideous. And he's sitting with his skeleton friend. This was at his, he had this really cool studio in Kearney, New Jersey. He's since vacated the premises. He doesn't live there anymore. But it was a really cool studio, and I had been there several times to conduct various businesses with him. Here's a character we all know. Who's this? Who's this guy? Whoa. Hold on. Is that who I think it is? It's Marky Ramone. Drumsticks not included. It wasn't a long one, but it's something instead of nothing. That's right. We got a little Marky Ramone there. This is Jerry and Doyle's brother. I don't know if I showed you this one last week. So that's Kenny. That's Jerry and Doyle's brother. And his interview was the longest one I ever did. I had to come back in 2 sessions. As a matter of fact, this is the room. Remember at the very beginning of this episode, I was talking about Tank's house. This is Tank's house, and this is somewhere in the room is the Danzig skull from the contest of this interview. So it's in this room. And this was the longest interview I did. It was 4 hours long. I had to come back. It was 2 sessions. And Kenny just gave me a phenomenal interview. So generous with his time. Honestly, one of the nicest, coolest dudes I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. He also gave me all of his negatives, his photos. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So I have what must be. I don't put them out there. They're not mine to really publish. I did put some of them in 1979, but I have his photos. Oh, here's a character you might recognize. This was it's funny. I can't believe it's been 10 years since I did this interview. You recognize that voice? Oh, it's our pal, Steve Zing. This was the day I met Steve. That's not true, actually. I had actually met Steve twice before. I met him at that show, Kevin, that we were both at, where we met. The same day I met Kevin, I met Steve, and then I met him again in Chicago. So this is my 3rd time meeting Steve, technically. And that was his old studio. Okay, you know who this guy? Oh, this is friggin' great. All right, this is great. You know who this is? Hold on. Ready for this one? I don't know why I did this. At some point I just started to get really wacky with these things. I spoke to Guitar Wolf. Guitar Wolf. What was I thinking? Like, Guitar Wolf. If any of you who know who Guitar Wolf is, like, this is hilarious in the best way ever. And they were so nice. This was right before their show at the Knitting Factory in Brooklyn. And then, wait, ready? I put him on the spot. I was like, hold on, I'll play this part for you because it's great. Can you hear that?
Enter the Dragon. Back to the Future.
Ready? Wait, ready? Ah!
Jet Generation.
Dude, that was just the bee's knees. Did I interview Dinah Cancer? Yes, I did. Where's Dinah Cancer? She's here. If anybody knows Dinah Cancer from 45 Grave. Oh, hers is not. Uh-oh. I can't show you Diana Cancer, but it's right. Let me see. I don't know if this is going to work. There she is. You can see her right there. I didn't talk to her for very long. This was, Kevin, you were at that show too. Kevin, do you remember that? That was a great show. That was where was that? That was somewhere in, you guys know Bevan Davies, who played on Circle of Snakes, right? Hold on. Here's Bevan Davies. He gave me a very interesting interview about just a lot of stuff. This was at the Brooklyn Bowl. Really nice guy. Oh, you did film an interview with her the same night. Yeah, that was at Europa. Yes. I interviewed her at the Beauty Bar. The Beauty Bar came first. I don't think the Beauty Bar was first, and then they played that show. Here you go. Here's a classic. These guys were so friggin' awesome and nice and cool. Got some bouncing souls up in this piece. Just a great bunch of guys. Friggin' Pete and Brian. Some of these early tapes really suck in quality, though. I'm sorry to say. They're all in HD, but the camera I was using, I know I had Damien from Samhain. I had Damien from Samhain on Pizza Punk, but this is when I first met Damien about 10 years ago. And I interviewed him for 2 hours. 2 hours at his place of work, and then I drove him home. And funny thing, when I drove him home, I played for him. We listened to Son of Sam, which he had never heard before. It was a really weird experience. Let's put it that way. I don't know how it came up in conversation, but he said he had never heard it. I said, "Oh, I'll play it for you." So he did. Whoa, small world. John Voice of Doom was also there. So Kevin and I and John were all at the same show. I filmed a song. Wait, I filmed a song for 45 Grave while you ran to the bathroom? I do not remember that. Do not remember that. Here's the guy. Remember we were talking about the guy who won the contest? First of all, this is funny. Look. Wait. Screw that. Here we go. So here's the guy. This is the guy who won that Danzig contest. That's Tank. He won the skull that was mentioned at the beginning of this interview. This is his house. And this house was purchased, or he put a down payment on this house with the money that he made from his Misfits collection. It's like the greatest story in the world, which he told for me on camera. Oh, on your camera. Oh, I think I've seen that footage. That was a great show, that 45 Grave show. They're still doing shows. The guitarist, one of the guitarists, Ken something, he was a nice guy. The other one was kind of obnoxious. L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron something like that. He was L. Ron Jeremy. That was his name. He was kind of a dick a little bit. Anybody, if you've a Cro-Mags fan in the house, I posted a clip of this the other week. This was at Paris's loft. He doesn't live here anymore. He was on the first episode of Pizza Punk. Yeah, Jeremy was his name. L. Ron Jeremy. Yeah, that guy was kind of obnoxious. A little teeny tiny bit. Who else do I got? All right, last one I'm going to show you. By the way, so this is the guy who wrote Scream With Me, the book. This is the guy who put together the Misfits box set. This is the mastermind behind 12 Hits from Hell and the Static Age release. This guy right here. That's him. This is Tom Begowitz. And it was in this room that I listened to all those alternate versions of Misfit songs on his personal iPod. So And that tape is, it's like 3 hours long. So as you can see, there's lots and lots of interviews here. Lots of interesting tidbits. I'm like exhausted. I really have to go to sleep. I have to wake up tomorrow and get my son on the bus. There's Walter. There's Walter Lure, man. Friggin' also passed away last year from the Heartbreakers, Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, and the Waldos. He is in this movie in some small way. The last one I'm going to show you is this. I think is so beloved. Anybody like some Calabrese Brothers? We got some Calabrese. Hey, Calabrese guys. Calabrese guys are in the movie. Anybody like American Hardcore? This is the guy who wrote the American Hardcore book. His name is Steve Blush. Stephen Blush. Yeah. So I've just been sitting on this for literally years. There was a period of 5 years where I just didn't do anything with these tapes. I didn't talk about it, yada, yada, yada. I just kept it to myself. And I wasn't on the internet for years. Oh, here's a guy. Anybody who's into hardcore, will know who this guy is. This is John Stabb from Government Issue. He passed away. Sweet man, truly a sweet man. He's in the movie. He's so funny the way he mimics Glenn. He has a Southern accent when he does it. And I'm like, why are you doing that with a Southern accent? He's like, I don't know. Oh, you worked for Steve as well. Man, what a small world. Really nice dude. Very, very interesting guy. Oh, Frankenstein opened up for Haunted Garage Reunion. I flew to LA for 2000. Huh. Yeah, I really don't know anything about Frankenstein. I just know that that's his band. 138 terabyte drive. Yeah, dude. I got storage. I believe I filmed Walter's last interview, which was with Steven. Interesting. You'll appreciate this then, Kevin. Check this out. This is Billy Rath, who, if I could find it. Billy Rath. Here's the guy from Rosemary's Babies. Oh boy, that was a messed up tape. This guy, that's the guitar player. That's the guitar player from Rosemary's Babies. So look, do I have Glenn, Jerry, and Doyle? No. Will I ever get Glenn, Jerry, and Doyle? No. But do I have some interesting people that are going to provide interesting commentary on this band, Misfits? Absolutely. Absolutely. Here is, I believe this is the only interview with Billy Rath, long form interview. I don't think there's any other in existence. So that's the other heartbreaker who was also since passed. Here's Basil, the B man. Such a sweetheart of a man. That guy was awesome too. It's so weird to think so many of these people have passed away at this point, and they're just like gone. But they exist on these tapes. Oh, this is one you might know. This is.
We're rolling again. Stand up just a smidgen closer.
Jesus Christ. Killing me. There's Howie Pyro. He's a little out of focus. He had a very short window of time to do this. He was only in town for like one day. Very, very sad. Supposed to interview Jerry for someone else's project soon. That's cool. Is he Is it Misfits related, or is it just something that Jerry is doing a talking head thing? What else am I going to do here? This guy's interesting. This guy, I think I might have shared this last time, actually. This guy owns Mixolydian Studios and was there when they were recording Walk Among Us. So he was like the engineer or something. Something like that. I don't know. All right, last one I'm going to show, and then I am so friggin' caked. The talking head thing. Oh man, that's what Jerry's the best at that stuff, dude. That's what he does. That's what he does. He's a talking head king of talking heads. This is the last one I'm going to show. So you're going to recognize this first guy on this tape. That's Mark Kennedy, the founder of Misfits Central. That's one of my, I was so stoked to do an interview with this guy. He's such an inspiration for me. Then up next, I don't know if it's the only one, but here's Odorous, man. Never before seen interview with Odorous from Guar. Dave Brocky, that's at the Slave Pit where I interviewed him. At the Slave Pit, he opened the door and got dressed up just for me, and we did this interview. It was just me and him. He took me on a tour. He took pictures of me with my cell phone. Like he's showing me all these Tupperware bins full of like costumes from various tours. It was a great time, man. It was a really great time. And I was very sad when he passed away because he was just such a nice man. All these guys have been nice to me, helped me out doing my thing. Thank you so much. Yes, I agree, man. R.I.P. Dave, truly a genius. Thank you so much thank you, Rue, for tuning in. I will check my Facebook messages. They're all backed up. You know me. I freaking hate that inbox. I truly do. I'll take a look. I'm exhausted, but thank you for sticking with me. There's still 12 people. We're 3.5 hours into this. Thank you to Greg. Greg will be on next week. We have it all set up. We have it scheduled. That's why I'm talking about it so freely right now, because he's coming on the show and I'm very excited to have him. We're going to have a nice conversation about these interviews, about the Misfits, about all sorts of stuff. And he's such an insightful fellow that I suspect it will be some good content. Hey, Rusty Murdergram, thanks for tuning in, and I'm glad you appreciate that stuff. I've never shown that much stuff before. That's like my archive, man. Precious secrets. Not really, but yeah. Okay. All right. I'm ending this thing. Peace and hair crease. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.